Councilmember Hartman,
Here.
Councilmember Jablonski.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mayor.
All right, if we could please stand and if you'd lead the pledge, we'd appreciate it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, who wants to start out? Andy, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council, and welcome to our first public budget hearing for fiscal year 2021. Tonight's meeting is the next to last step in our budget process, a process that began internally back in February, or BC, before COVID. I'd like to begin by thanking the Mayor and Council, town advisory boards, residents, department directors, and staff for their input and their extensive efforts throughout the process. A special thanks to Marty Sherwood and the entire finance team. I can tell you that this has been the most challenging budget year in my professional career. Marty, Russell, and I have worked hard to capture the needs of the community while remaining sensitive to the economic climate. Tonight's presentation will be done in 4 sections. We'll begin with the solid waste assessment, then move on to the fire assessment, followed by the millage, and concluding with the budget. This meeting will establish the final solid waste and fire assessments for fiscal year 2021. The millage and budget will be heard again in our second public budget hearing on September 24th at 6 p.m. That meeting will also be virtual. And Marty, go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Town Administrator Andy Burns. Let's get the share screen. We have Russell Strum, Town Controller, handling the PowerPoint. I want to also thank Vanessa Redmond, who was invaluable for putting all the PowerPoint together. Before we start, I want to let everyone know, residents, this has been posted to the website in the finance and budget area. If anyone should choose to download it and print it, you can do that now. It's available to yourself. We're going to go, as Andy said, into a 4-stage process. Tonight is our first public hearing, which involves our final solid waste assessment rate adoption, our final fire assessment rate adoption, our tentative first public hearing millage adoption, and our tentative first public hearing for the budget adoption. Before we go into the resolutions, I'll give everyone an overview. Next slide, please. Trying to get to the next slide. We'll get there. Good, thank you, Russell, coming over to help Rich. We want to have the PowerPoint, not the PDF. Still working through technical difficulties. Everything's going okay. The next slide
we're just having a little technical difficulty here. I think Russ is going to have to do it on his end. I don't have the capability.
Okay. Okay. Well, we ran through the test. I know it worked. Our next slide is our distinguished town council. Doug McKay, our mayor. Dee Schroeder, vice mayor. Delsa Amundsen is our council member. Bob Hartman and Gary Jablonski are our town council. And our town administration, Andy Burns, Russell Moonies, Keith Polikoff, and myself, Marty Sherwood, as your town financial administrator. Our summary, now we can move to the next slide. There we go. We'll get there to the slideshow. You do have the slide. Yeah, do slide slow and start from beginning. Thank you. From beginning. We'll go down to slide number 3, which will cover our summary. And we're going to be going and reviewing overall everything we're going to cover tonight. The fiscal year 2021 proposed rates and fees compared to fiscal year 2020. We're on slide number 3. Russell, tab down to slide 3.
Hey, Russell, go down to the bottom of the screen where the slider is, and you'll see a little box with a line underneath it. That'll put you in presentation mode. Bottom right.
Yeah, hold on one second. I thought I was already there. I don't know why. Do you see it now or no?
We see we see it in edit mode. We don't see it in presentation mode.
Huh.
How about from slideshow from beginning? Did you hit to the left, hard left, Russ?
No, I mean, I did that already.
From beginning.
And okay, I'm sorry. Bob, what were you saying as I was trying to get to the...
Go 3 to the right of that. You were where you just were. There's a little box with a line through it and a line underneath, down on the bottom where you just were.
Down at the bottom.
Keep going. That's it. You went over it. To the left, to the left, to the left, left, left. There you go. Up. One more. One more.
Just next to the volume slider.
Yeah, well, that's actually the size. But anyway, yeah, right there. You got it. That should put it up. Is it putting it up on a different screen of yours?
I see page 3.
I don't know why I'm not seeing it. It's weird. Hold on a second.
You know what? Just use it like this.
I have 3 screens here, so I'm trying to get to...
Yeah, that's the challenge. When you have 3, it's going to put it up on another one, and you might not be sharing that screen. Try resharing.
Yeah.
Because then you can pick the screen.
All right, let's try this again. Sorry about that, folks.
Okay with me.
Look at that.
Oh, that's working. Okay, slide number 3. Now here's our summary. On the left side, you will note our adopted fiscal year 2020 rate fees. On the right is our initial fiscal year 2021 rate and fees. I won't cover the adopted. I'll go through, though, the initial and final as proposed. Our solid waste has no change proposed for next year throughout all residential parcel lot sizes. Our fire assessment has a $105.63 increase, which represents approximately 20% per residential unit from fiscal year 2020. And finally, we're going to cover the operating millage and budget. The operating millage is 4.2500 mils. Our TISDA has 0 mils. The total at 4.2500 mils represents a net decrease of 0.4064 mils, or a minus 8.73% from fiscal year 20. And also, important thing to note is it is 0.2058 mils, or 4.62% lower than our rollback for this year. Now, before we go into solid waste, I would please ask the town clerk to read in the resolution for the solid waste, and then we'll go into the PowerPoint, please. And we need a motion, please.
Yeah, this is a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Southwest Ranches, Florida, relating to the provision of solid waste services, facilities, and programs to residential properties in the Town of Southwest Ranches, Florida, for fiscal year 2020 to 2021, commencing October 1st, 2020. Providing authority for solid waste services assessments, providing purpose and definitions, providing findings, incorporating the solid waste special assessment methodology report, providing for an exemption for veteran service-connected total and permanent disability, approving the assessment role, and providing an effective date.
Okay, wonderful. Another
moved.
thing I wanted, oh, sorry. Thank you. Move, we need a second.
Second.
Great.
Okay, go ahead, Marty.
We're okay. Thank you, Mayor. Okay, on the bottom right, you also, council residents, you'll note our slide numbers on the bottom right to assist you all in the presentation. If anyone has any question as to slides as we go along, just jot down the number and we'll be able to zip right back to it. Okay, moving on to slide 5. It gives us the initial solid waste rates, which will represent our final. The background on our garbage assessment is it is permitted by Florida statute chapters 197.3632, and the annual rate establishment is required tonight per town ordinance 2002-08. So our initial solid waste rates as compared to fiscal year 19 and 20, you will note on the hard right that shows no increase or decrease. That's no changes throughout all tranche parcel sizes. Now, the impact. For fiscal year 2021, we proudly proposed no changes in all the residential categories. This occurred due to successful management and legal negotiations, obtaining a permanently reduced bulk disposal maximum generation factor from 4.67 to 3.73 tons per unit in the prior year. While the annual collection element contract adjustments consisting of both the CPI and fuel indices primarily offset each other. Additionally, it reflects the town council's policy of full cost recovery with no rate subsidy. The final point we wanted to make in this area is that the proposed fiscal year 2021 rate for all the ranges average higher than all the property rate ranges retroactive from fiscal year 2012 by an overall average of less than 8% over 9 years. So that represents less than a 1% increase annually per year over the past 9 years. Now I just have the final slide, which requires public comment, questions, direction, and then the voting from town council. So I turn it back to you, Mayor McKay.
Okay.
I would have said it was probably ready.
Any other questions or input here?
You can go to the public?
We can.
Yes, please.
All right. Do we have anyone out there that got their hand raised?
No, Mayor, there's no one with their hands raised on this particular item.
All right. Back to the council then.
I've got a couple of comments to make on this.
Right ahead.
And this really, I think, I'm not sure who to direct this at. Well, I'll direct it at you, Andy, and Keith, you may want to jump in. So when you all negotiated this back with the contractor, the waste hauler, what is it now, 4 years ago? I forget. 3 years, 4 years? That first
It's
year,
2 years.
we were pretty generous to them in not going after damages for lack of service. And Keith did an excellent job of writing into the contract all sorts of provisions that cover the town for lack of service. You know, if they start missing, if they miss regularly, et cetera. That first year, we were pretty generous. There were a lot of bumps in the road for them. You know, we were moving from one to the other. And there were a bunch of challenges. Now, this year, due to COVID, you know, their service levels have been horrible. I mean, they haven't picked up my garbage in a week out in front of my house. I don't even want to talk about bulk. I hear it from people all the time. I've made excuses for them because, you know, I recognize the fact that they're dealing with it just like everybody else. But where I stop being so generous is the fact that they're charging us higher rates because the way you negotiate these kinds of contracts, if a partner that you're doing business with negotiates penalties, you factor those into your costs. So we've been talking for years about how we're paying a premium to this company to provide us premium service. And I'm not looking to be some sort of a monster here, but we've let them off the hook in my mind, we probably need to talk to them. I mean, they want to charge us consumer price index increases, fuel increases, which haven't changed, et cetera. And, you know, the service they're providing, for whatever the reason, this is a contract, this is business, is not been nearly what we would have expected this year. And the reasons are obvious, but do we have any recourse to, you know, give some relief to our residents? Do we have a way that we can go back to them and say, we need to negotiate? Maybe we're not going to, or maybe we're going to, as a going in. We're going to go after you on all these things and see how they respond. So I want to put that out there because, you know, yeah, it's not costing the residents any more money, but we've been getting lousy service this year. And should there be compensation to the town for that, which then we can either offset next year's garbage bill or however we decide to handle that. But I don't think we're getting what we're paying for. So I wanted to throw that out.
Keith, you got any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it may be more geared to Andy, because all I could say is that Councilmember Hartman was correct, that the contract is clear, that there are very stringent penalties that were put in place for missed service, lack of service, and otherwise, and it's up to administration to determine when or if they would like to enforce certain portions of that agreement with knowing what's going on with COVID in mind. But Councilmember Hartman aptly stated it, that the contract is clear that we could go after them if the administration chooses to.
Andy?
Yeah, I'll jump in here as well. Yes, that's true with certain provisions. For the most part, they give us a report at the end of the day, and they'll let us know where they are in their collections, and what they need to finish, where they're running behind is normally completed the next morning. And the contract allows them to do that the next. Now, Councilmember Hartman, you mentioned to me earlier today that your street had gotten missed. I was not aware of that previously. So things like that where a street or houses get missed for an extended period of time, yes, we absolutely have the ability to punish them for that. And I have no compunction whatsoever about doing that. But if a street is missed, an entire pickup is missed, if we don't know about it, and most of the time residents let us know, but not always. So if a street is missed, like for example, if you were missed last Wednesday and we didn't know that, I can't go back and punish them. Code will look in on bulk to see if people are out on the wrong days or too far in advance or on the in-between weeks. Generally, the solid waste stuff, they're not looking to recycling. They're not looking to see if that's been collected or not. So if we have situations where houses or streets are being missed for an extended period of time, and it's not corrected immediately the next morning, yes, we can do that. We just need to be aware of it.
So I learned of it yesterday, Andy, because the two people who typically take out, I handle bulk, they take out garbage. That's why you hear from me when they don't pick up bulk. But I got reminded yesterday by my wife that they hadn't picked up now in a week. So, you know, I didn't know, or I would have contacted you sooner. But regardless of me, I mean, we shouldn't be acting because I'm escalating this. It sounds to me like you got a log of residents that call in. I know they've got a log because the residents call, people can do it online, and they probably keep records. So if I'm being told that there's nothing we can do, I mean, I got to believe if we did some homework on this, we could get some redress and some restitution for the quality of service.
Yes, it is something we can address. And my point was not that we escalated it because you told me.
Oh, no, and I didn't mean that.
I am copied on the vast majority of those emails between customer service and Waste Pro. And I hadn't seen anything in the last week about 198.
Right,
So,
right.
So I don't mean that you escalated it.
Maybe they're mad at me.
On your street
Somebody threw a rock from my house or something.
Yeah.
But I didn't mean to imply that because it's me. I'm just saying.
No, of course
keep
not.
records. We should use our records and try to get the reimbursement for the town for the quality of service. Does anybody else think this way?
You know, I've got to say, I'll jump in for a minute. You know, under the circumstance with COVID and whatnot, I think if we were to penalize them and try to go back out and maybe get a new bid or something, I think under the circumstances, the rate would probably come in even higher. and I don't know that you're going to get a whole lot better service at the time. So I'm a little gun shy on not going after them, but as far as putting it back out and going to reshop it or anything like that.
That's not what I implied at all. I mean, you know, we have, how long is the contract, Keith? 5 years, 7 years? Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot.
Sorry, I was looking for the unmute. It's a long-term contract, and Andy, I think it might be 5 and 5.
Mhm.
Okay. But my point, Doug, is that we're not getting the service we're continuing to pay for. We
Agreed.
put the teeth in the contract so that we would have recourse if their service was low, based on the experience we had with our prior contractor. I'm not suggesting we go back out to bid. They just need to compensate and make things right.
Do we have a list, Andy, of where most of the complaints come from?
The customer service is now tracking those complaints, but generally they've been resolved the same day. So I want to get a sense of where they are across town and how long, I need a better sense of how long it's taking to resolve them.
Right, but if they're mostly isolated in one area, like out west or something like that, I think that's where the focus should be, to say, listen, under no circumstances are these people to be left unattended. You know, make sure that they're picked up on their days they need. I don't hear too many complaints, you know, this side of 75, but if there's a lot of complaints coming in from the other side of 75, that to me seems to be a problem and it needs to be addressed.
Well, we actually have it all over town. We have it on this side of 75 also. We have
But
quite
I'm
a bit
saying
on.
we still have to have a list of where it happens more frequently. And I think that's maybe kind of where Bob might be heading to. If it seems to be a problem out there, well, nip it in the bud and take care of it. You know, make sure that they get the service that they're paying for.
Well, I know Andy had been speaking with them. I don't know the last time you spoke with them, Andy, but is there a scheduled phone conversation again with them to get up to speed on when they're going to get this fixed?
There isn't anything on the schedule now, but that doesn't mean there can't be as of tomorrow.
I would say that needs to be done without a doubt.
Hey, Doug, can I jump in?
Sure, of course.
Yeah, I think Andy can probably help out with this, with discussions of his counterparts in Waste Pro. I was, you know, we're all reacting to the COVID crisis, and you know, and we're paying for services, you know. And the other day I was driving down Pines Boulevard, I mean, a couple days ago, and I ran into 8 Waste Pro trucks servicing Pembroke Pines, and I didn't make it to I-75. It was just to 186. So I know they have the resources. It's just a matter of them allocating them properly. And maybe we're getting the short end of the stick. I don't know, but that's something that Andy needs to determine with his counterpart. I think we should let Andy handle that once he knows the scope of the problem.
I can't tell you, we are in the process of implementing new internal controls for exactly this reason.
Excuse me, may I?
Yes, go ahead, Kelsey.
Thanks a lot. We haven't had any problems where I am or on 166, even on 52nd, because I'm taking care of a house I just sold there. And we put out the trash and it's picked up bulk and otherwise. But I think once there is some sort of a list that Andy has, then it can be focused in on as to where the problem is, if there is a major problem. And because I know around here, I haven't had one complaint, and my husband would complain a lot because he rips out a lot of kitchens and baths and puts stuff out when it needs to be put out. So, and they took the toilet that was out there the other day. So I'm just saying, I just think once you have something on paper, you'll be able to visualize where an issue is, if it is, and how often it is. So it's kind of like a big circle with it's empty right now. So I think I agree with you, Gary, that Andy looking over the stats, whatever they may be, will be more helpful down the road.
So Andy, I look forward to your report. We can talk about it at a future council meeting. Thank
like
you.
a plan. Okay, anyone else? All right,
Call question?
all the questions.
Councilmember Amundson,
Yes?
Councilmember Hartman,
Yes.
Councilmember Jablonski,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schroeder. Vice Mayor Schroeder,
Yes.
thank you. And Mayor McKay.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay.
Marty,
Okay, wonderful, Mayor.
okay.
All right, can we move on to the next section? And please have the town clerk read into the roll the resolution for the fire assessment.
Yes, okay. This is a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Southwest Ranches, Florida, providing findings, providing purpose, providing for provision and funding of fire protection services, providing for imposition and computation of fire protection assessments, providing legislative determinations of special benefit and fair apportionment, approving the final fire services assessment rates and final rule relating to the provision of fire protection services, facilities, and programs in the town for fiscal year 2020 through 2021, confirming an exemption for veterans with service-connected total and permanent disability, providing for effective adoption of resolution, providing for application of assessment proceeds, providing for conflicts and severability, and providing an effective date.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Russell, please. We'll start over this, and now we're going to cover the PowerPoint as it relates to the fire assessment rates. Slide number 9, please.
Can you see that, Marty?
Only slide I have is slide 8, still
Okay.
showing on my screen.
All right, let me fix this here. I don't know why it's doing that.
Move to slide 9.
Okay, I'm not sure why it's doing that again. Hang on a second. I'm starting.
Okay.
Let's see. Let me go back. Let me see what's going on here. Try this again. I apologize, guys. Not sure what's going on here. Having a tough time today with this.
Hey, Russell, something you can try at the top of the screen, you see where it says monitor? And it probably says automatic or something along those lines. You can switch which monitor it's being displayed on.
No, I don't. I mean, I don't see that. I think I know what you're talking about, but you mean in the let's see. Hold on.
Right under the search bar at the top, to more or less center of the screen.
Yeah, it says automatic, and then it says use presenter
Right.
view.
You can switch it to one of your other screens.
It's not letting me change that
Okay.
for whatever reason. Hang on. Let me try something else here. Do you see that or no? Do you see anything now? Okay. I don't know why it's not sharing. I'm gonna have to close out of this and start it all over again. This is not what we wanted. Let me just hit stop share. Okay, let's see. Let's try this again. Slideshow. Did you see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's it. Slide number 9. Excellent. Okay, we're going over our fire assessment rates. Our introduction for tonight, the fire assessment methodology has been updated from the prior year with community input regarding a 2020 consultant study. Our proposed, we're going to cover 3 different areas and slides. Our proposed and actual rates, history by category, and then we're going to provide a municipal rate comparison. Now, next slide, please. Our background for the fire assessment. This assessment is permitted by Florida Statute Chapters 166.021 and 166.041 and is adopted by Town Ordinance 2001-09. The Ordinance 2001-09 requires that the annual rate be established each fiscal year, and our Resolution 2020-045 adopted a new fire assessment methodology impacting all categories due to changes in allocable fire protection costs and from the most recent 5 years of fire response data. 2 of the 5 categories are on slide 12. We have our residential rates going back from 2018 up through as proposed. You will see the jump from 523.51 to 629.14. The bottom line, green, is our vacant agricultural, where has a slight decrease from $95.21 to $84.76 for 21. This is a 3-year history and proposed fiscal year 2021. Moving left to right, we'll see the brown line, which is our industrial warehouse. As compared to the prior year, it's a decrease from $1.60 down to 54 cents. All this is building square foot rates. The commercial blue line in the middle has a increase from 90 cents up to $1.1266. And finally, our institutional had the biggest jump from 25 cents building square foot to $1.2106 as proposed for next year. Our explanation and comparison, a number of municipalities subsidize their fire protection assessment costs with property tax, that's general fund revenue. Actually, several do not even assess a fire protection assessment and therefore fund 100% from their general fund. Currently, the Southwest Ranches policy does not subsidize any fire protection costs from its general fund. The numbers that were provided to the Broward County property appraisers, and you'll see a comparison of all the rates for on the next screen for all the municipalities. They are not truly reflective of 100% full cost recovery for fire protection. For example, Sunrise and Cooper City has indicated that their initial fire assessment represents only 70 and 75% respectively of full cost recovery. Therefore, the municipalities with an unchanged assessment are likely subsidizing their fire operation in the case of a shortfall, or utilizing general fund balance, otherwise known as reserves, to fund their fire capital projects. Southwest Ranches initially adopted an increase of approximately 20%, which represents $105.63 per residential unit. Our next slide presents the comparison from the prior year to the next year proposed. You will see they are ranked in the fiscal year 2021 proposed fee dollar denomination off to the right, and obviously there you see the 20% increase, the change. What we've done is we've highlighted all the municipalities that represent increases, which is nearly a half are presenting some sort of increase for next year's fee. So that's for comparison purposes. And the other, go back to 15, you will see these rates are all inching up over the $300 rates. There are practically a third that are getting close to or exceeding $300 or more, with an attempt, we can only imagine, is to get closer to full cost recovery, unlike the Southwest Ranches, which does present their fire fee at full cost recovery. Okay, slide 16, which 25 municipalities, and you will see we have 31 municipalities. There, 6 of them just assess no fees or charge it separately, and are subsidizing it through the general fund. That's all I have for the presentation. I'm sending it back to the Mayor McKay for public comment, questions, and then direction and voting from the Town Council. Thank you very much.
I think we have a lot of questions in this area, I'm sure. So who wants to go first?
I'll just ask a quick one. Marty, can you go back to, I think it was slide 14, where you had all the other distributions other than residential?
Yes, that's, we have slides 12 and 13. 12 has got the residential and vacant ag.
13, I think.
13,
13,
okay.
yeah, 13 has the industrial warehouse, commercial, and institutional.
Right.
Right, okay.
If Russell can pull that back up.
Yep, perfect. Thank you, Russell.
Yeah.
So the question I have is, I noticed that the industrial warehousing went from $1.84 per square foot down to 54 cents a square foot. So it's roughly a third of what it used to be. What did we lose industrial / warehouse in town? Why did it drop so dramatically? Do they have no calls? How did we come back to that number? And you or Chris or whoever can answer that.
Well, there's a combination, and we do have the consultant, Chris Wallace, on the line, and
I think it's a Chris. I think it's a Chris question. So.
Yes. Chris, are you there? Take it off mute.
Yeah, I was trying to do it. The screen keeps jumping off. Can you hear me?
We can
yes,
hear you.
We hear you.
Great. Hopefully you can see me too. I don't know if the camera's working or not. I had problems with it earlier today. So first, let me just say that the current rate is more in line with most cities in Broward County. It's actually kind of surprises people that industrial warehouse usually has not that many calls for service. Just to step back a moment, how the percentage of cost distribution is a function of the calls for service to the different categories. Also, you have not updated your methodology in about 10 years. So when you see a graph like this where all of a sudden things change, that probably wouldn't be so noticeable if you updated this every 4 or 5 years, which is what most attorneys would recommend you do. So all these costs, as far as the percentage distribution, have to do with the calls for service that were measured during the period of time and averaged. We had a number of years that we blended together, so it kind of smoothed those out. But I suspect this is just a function of the call distribution pattern has changed over the last 10 years more than anything. And I would, like I said, I would also note that this is more in keeping with what you see in most cities in Broward County. Warehouse industrial tends to be not that big of a call center, if you will. It doesn't get that many calls for service. Most people find that counterintuitive, but that's pretty consistent with most cities.
So then the drop is mostly call distribution. So, and you're saying a lot of it has to do with, or the steep peaks on some of these have to do with the fact that we didn't have one in, I think it's 9 years.
Yeah,
So,
it's been correct. It's been a while, and I think you don't want to do it too often because then it jumps up and down like this. I think
Right.
you want to do it more often than you have been, so it kind of smooths itself out.
and that would be why commercial is almost 5 times as much as it was last year on a per square foot basis.
Well, yeah, it's the same problem, but in reverse. You had more
Yeah.
calls in the commercial side over that period of time than you had. So I don't recall, and I'm sorry, I don't recall how much it may be that you had more commercial. I don't think so. I don't think you have a lot of commercial in Cooper City, I'm sorry, Southwest Ranches to begin with. But you know, because you don't have a lot, call distribution can have a noticeable impact. Hello? I'm sorry, if that was a question, I didn't hear it.
I think
Everyone-
somebody has their phone unmuted. So yeah, I think you're right, because nobody from the warehouse industrial segment of our fire fees in our town contacted me, but I got a number on commercial. This has had a significant impact on some people.
Yeah, the other thing is you're assessing and collecting more as you know, our methodology collects more of as a percentage of the fire budget than it had before as well. So your policy to collect 100% coupled with 100% of the fire services cost, coupled with the change in how we approach this, and the slight increase in the fire costs increased all rates because of that. I don't know if you followed what I said or not.
Yeah, I did in the beginning. Can you repeat that? Because the beginning of what you were saying is what I want to focus on, I think.
All right, so you have a policy of collecting 100% of the fire services costs.
Right.
Obviously, you can't collect more than that, but you can collect up to 100%. And most cities don't collect 100%. They collect something less than that, and sometimes substantially less. And you saw that in Marty's survey of other cities of what they charge. That's why, you know, that's why you're up at the top. It's not necessarily because your cost of fire services is more than anybody else's. It's just that you collect more of a percentage of your fire services cost from an assessment, whereas other cities balance that out against, say, the property tax levy. But that's a ways and means of operating your city. You certainly can collect 100%. So that's part of it. Your fire services costs went up a little bit, but I don't really consider that in this current year to be a big jump. It was a couple $100,000 or so. It does tend to go up and down. I know I got an email a couple of times from Fred about the inflation factor that we used in our report, but that's just an illustration. But my point on the fire services cost, sometimes you've had an increase that's been much more than 4.5%. Sometimes it's been less than that, but over, say, a 5 or 6 year period, you know, for projection purposes only, 4.5% was what we used in the report. But that's just an illustration. Every year you have to use what your costs actually are and assess for those costs.
You had made a comment about how we're recovering more. Does that mean we're closer to 100%?
No. In the previous studies, the distribution between you can only collect on the fire services cost, not the EMS portion of your budget.
Yep.
How we measure your fire services costs in our study is different than the previous consultant study, and you can take issue with one or the other. They're both acceptable methods. Our approach is if you were to just strip off EMS and only do fire, that's what we assess for. If you go back in time in Broward County, you would find that fire service protection was kind of not really well coordinated. And it wasn't but 20 or so years ago that you would find a call for an EMS unit. The fire truck might go out because they had BLS or basic life support services on there. Broward County would then send out an EMS unit to actually help with the medical care. And then they actually contracted with ambulance companies to tote you from the scene of the accident or whatever to a hospital. So you had potentially a fire department operating initially, then rescue units showing up, and then a transport. Now you have an integrated system, but if you were ever to split off EMS from fire, what we're showing is this is what your fire costs would still be. The fact that you have people who are able to provide, and sometimes do provide, paramedic services that reside on fire trucks, to us is kind of beside the point. Fire services are generally idle, meaning you do not usually have a lot of calls for service for fire. You have availability to put out fires, which is the most important thing, but most of your calls are for EMS. So the response protocols are they usually send out the rescue units first. If the rescue units are busy, they send out the fire trucks, but fire trucks really aren't capable of transporting anyone to the hospital as a general rule. So they exist solely, not solely, but they exist primarily. And the reason you have a fire truck and the reason you have firefighters on a fire truck is to put out fires. So our methodology is different. And because of that, you're able to potentially collect more for fire services through an assessment. You don't have to, but you potentially can. Your particular practice in the city is that you want to collect 100%. We've provided you more capability to collect more. You don't have to, but you do. So that costs the proportion of the total fire rescue budget that you can collect through an assessment in our methodology is greater than it used to be. Your practice of collecting 100% generates higher rates. A lesser issue is how those costs are distributed, and that's a different issue because of how basically calls are distributed. But what you can collect and what you do collect is what's driving most of these costs.
So let me ask you two questions, and then I'll yield to everybody else because I don't want to hog all the time, and I know we're on a time frame here. So there's two things that I've gotten a ton of questions on. One is, what did we change that made it swing, so dramatically? Because I can't explain that necessarily. That's why I was waiting for you to get on here. And then the other thing is, you're aware of the 4 or 5 lots that have had dramatic increases. In one case that I'm aware of, it went up about 10 times what last year's fee was. And I know that you and Marty have been working with those property owners to try to, come up with some accommodations. But I think we need to explain why these things have swung. If we've changed our distributions of the costs, please explain that in plain English so I can understand it. And then, what's gone on with the couple of lots that have raised big concerns.
All right. Well, let's deal with the exceptions, the lots where people have questioned what they were charged, and some of the changes, particularly with agricultural commercial activities, and then agricultural non-commercial activities. And I would want to go down 2 different paths for that. So let me come back to those and just reiterate what we said here a moment ago. One of the biggest changes is, let's say before you could collect 60-40, now it's kind of flipped the other way. Instead of collecting 60% for EMS and 40% for fire, we're of the opinion you can collect 60% of your total budget from fire and 40% from EMS. This is relative to the manning that you put on each type of equipment. So you have staffing on a fire truck. We think that's primarily and exists solely for fire services. The rescue units have staffing, and those costs are driving, or that staffing is driving the costs. That doesn't mean you have to collect 100% of that change in distribution, but that's your policy and your practice. So that drives a big portion of what you come back. Part of that is your fire costs naturally increase from one year to the next. So about $200,000 or so of this is relative to an increase in the fire service budget that you have. That's percentage-wise not that great from year to year. It tends to be about, 4 to 5% overall over a long period of time. Excuse me. Now to switch gears on the people who had bigger changes in their assessment from year to year. excuse me, we've talked with a number of people, and we do try to be fair, and I wouldn't characterize it as trying to make an accommodation so much as trying to understand their particular situations. So virtually everyone that I've had to talk to that had changes or questions, commercial agriculture. And these are people who have agricultural exemptions, which by definition makes their property a commercial activity. So any structures that are worth more than $10,000 and are more than less than 70% open on the perimeter of the building for ingress and egress are accessible as a commercial structure potentially, or alternatively, depending on if they can describe the use of those structures as a warehouse industrial use. So in talking with at least two of those property owners, it seemed like the primary purpose of their structures was for a warehouse industrial use. And we recommended that it be changed from commercial to warehouse. But that was based, you know, you can't really tell from the property appraiser's records or from aerials, and sometimes even from a physical inspection of the outside of the property, if you're able to do that. Sometimes you have to talk about what the property owner actually uses those buildings for or intended to use those buildings for. And sometimes that use is ambiguous or can be one or the other or a combination of both, but you don't want to make it ridiculously tedious to implement it. You just want to be fair to people. So in two of those cases, we recommended that they be changed, the use be changed from commercial to warehouse because of what they were using the building for. If someone else, you know, we can only deal with the exceptions, people who contact us. If people don't contact us, we have to presume that the building is being used for a commercial purpose because that's generally what it's used for. They had not been assessed before in many cases. And unfortunately, that's probably not in keeping with even previous resolutions that you have. People presume that just because it's agricultural, it's not going to be assessed. That's true. Well, it's true to a point for the land, for sure, where instead of being charged maybe $130,000 or $150,000 an acre for, in Southwest Ranch's case for the land, they may be charged between $2,500 and $5,000 an acre. So instead of paying $6,000 or $7,000 in taxes on a 4 or 5 acre lot, they pay maybe $150,000 in total to all taxing authorities. The buildings on them are usually accessible, but sometimes they fall through the cracks because most commercial agricultural buildings, in fact, all agricultural buildings don't necessarily have to have a permit from the city. So you may not even be aware they exist. But everyone that that we looked at is a commercial agricultural building. If you have an agricultural exemption on your property, by definition, it's a commercial activity. You've proven to the property appraiser that you're engaged in commerce legitimately. And so it's just a question of, well, is that structure for the purposes of this assessment accessible? And it's really a two-pronged test. As I said, if it's worth more than $10,000 and it's less than 70% open on its perimeter for ingress and egress, then it's accessible. And it's really pretty much that clear for just about everybody. The use of the building only enters into it when they have a question about it. So I do try to contact them and ask them various questions. And in 2 instances, I think we recommended that they be changed from commercial to industrial warehouse. And in that case, both those assessments were recommended to be lowered because of the difference in rates. But I wouldn't call it an accommodation. I would call it more of an understanding of what they were using the buildings for. Because like I said, when you look at so many properties and from an aerials, you really can't tell what people are using it for. You have to rely upon the property owner to use the assessment process to bring to your attention that they may be unfairly being burdened with that. But at this point, I don't think they are, but I think those adjustments are fair.
All right, can I jump in here now? Or may
Thank
I,
you,
Bob?
Chris.
So a couple of things, couple of problems I've had just in the verbiage alone. You start telling people you're giving them a commercial rate. They don't live in a commercial district. So I realize some ag events and some ag practices are considered commercial through the county. But when you start telling them they're paying a commercial fire fee, they don't live in a commercial zone. So how can you bill them a commercial fire fee if they don't live in a commercial area or a warehouse area or whatever else? But let me go back just a minute and say, our intent was to simply correct the agricultural issues we had last year. Why do we still have a problem? That's one of my questions, okay? And then another question is that we had a lot of issues with our fire assessment last year, and that's why we went ahead with a new study. We're here now. Why so late are we getting the numbers to us? So,
Okay, well,
anyway, that's a couple of them. I have more, but go ahead if you'll handle those first.
All right, and I'll answer those too. And if you have more, obviously, I'll be glad to answer anything. I don't think you're getting this late. I think this thing was presented back in June or July. It did get off to a late start from what you guys wanted. I understand that, but
the final numbers when they came in, they were just like threw us all for a loop, I think. So,
yeah, well, okay, so let me talk about the agriculture, because I think that was, as you said, the impetus for the study. And you'll have to go down two different paths when you talk about agriculture. We have to think about agriculture that is not exempt for commercial purposes and is entitled to substantial exemptions from taxation, and which does not pay by and large a lot of property taxes to anybody because they have proven they are in a commercial agricultural business. And then agriculture that is not commercially exempt, does not have an exemption. And those would basically be, say, people who had barns or stalls for horses, stables. All those property owners, or pretty much all of them, got new bills last year. And I think that created a lot of ill will and a lot of confusion. So if you're wanting to talk about those, what the committee that we met with and the staff and working through the issues with horses and stables and response protocols for the fire department, you know, I think the committee and we came to be comfortable with it, that if you had a house and a barn or a stall or stables on your property, and it wasn't a commercial activity with a commercial exemption, or even if you had horses, it would be kind of a different deal, that the responses, the benefit from the fire service was pretty much the same. So the only issue for those types of properties was it gets a little bit complicated, because if you have, I'll just use two different properties that look the same to people but aren't. If you have a house and a barn on it, for instance, you're only going to get one assessment for both structures, or however many structures are on that one parcel, and they're all barns and whatever. If you have, now you can have, let's say that's your property, but your neighbor actually has the same property, but they have it on two different parcels. And one of those parcels has a house and the second parcel has a barn, but they otherwise look identical to yours. They're going to get two assessments. And there's really no way around that, because this assessment is done on the parcel basis. But they can get a unification of title if they go down to the property appraiser's office. And in that case, they would only be assessed for one unit instead of two. And that way they would be treated the same as, say, if that were your property. And the concern we have with that is if people do that, then the city's going to get a little bit less money when someone does that. But I think after the first or second year, that kind of, you know, levels itself out. Commercial agriculture, though, is different in the fact that it is commercial. It may not be a commercial district the way you think of it, or many people think of it, but it is commerce, and they are engaged in business, and they've gotten the exemptions off their property, which are substantial because they have proven that they are in the business. Now, most of these are nurseries or things related to nurseries. The concerns that we've had from people are that, well, you know, I only grow stuff that I use on my own projects. Well, that's fine, but you still are in the business of commerce. So it doesn't really matter what you're doing there. The fact that you've proven to the property appraiser's office and gotten exemptions otherwise, substantial exemptions from taxation on your property, you only get that if you're engaged in a business. So commercial agricultural is in fact a commercial district, in the fact that while they may not have smokestacks or they're doing retail operations and a lot of cars or whatever aren't moving in and out, they do in fact engage in commerce. That is the definition of it. And honestly, some of these structures can be surprisingly large, and some of them are just exempt because they're not worth very much. They're sheds. They're open to ingress and egress, so the statutes give them an exemption for that as well. But their buildings for taxation purposes are usually assessed for property tax purposes, but the land itself is substantially reduced for property tax purposes. But, and this is where they get a little confused. Sometimes when we use the word assessment, some people are talking about, well, assess for property tax purposes. Well, that's one use of the word assessment. But when it comes to special assessments, that's a different use of the word assessment, and it's for a different purpose. You're assessing the structure that creates a fire hazard that is benefited from the fire protection. So one way to looking at that is, you know, they don't really pay property taxes on their commercial activities. They're very, very reduced, and you can look at that at any property. But they benefit from fire protection. They're just not paying for it. So sometimes these assessments are designed to pick up people who don't pay very much in property taxes, but their property benefits from fire protection. So on the one hand, and honestly, let me just say this, the people I've talked to have been very nice and pleasant. We've had hours of discussions with all of them. You know, they're nice people and they understand the issues. They want to pay what they think is fair. But fairness is in the eyes of the beholder. So I don't know if they've talked to you since they've talked to us. You know, we've tried.
I've been speaking to them weekly.
Yeah, too.
All right, so let me ask
you.
let me throw another curveball here. How can we fix this issue, and when can we fix the issue? And is there other methodologies we should look at or consider in the future?
Well, you can find different methodologies, but it's not going to address the issue of people who have commercial agricultural structures that never paid anything before. They're going to pay something. If you went back to the old apportionment methodology, it would probably be a little bit less, but it wouldn't be a lot less. They would still be paying where they paid nothing or little up until last year or the current year. So I don't think, and our lawyers don't think, that you're going to be able to not assess a commercial structure on exempt agricultural property that's engaged in commerce, because it is a benefit to their property. So why would you give them, the legal argument is, why can you exempt them and not the people who you know, have a retail operation or a commercial operation of some other type? They're all businesses. So I don't really have a solution for you. You're either going to find a way that we're not aware of to exempt these commercial activities on agricultural properties, or you're not. But it presents a problem to the other people, the other commercial properties that are paying it. And I think you need to step back and ask, do they benefit from fire service? They are benefiting from the cost of you doing fire. And to the extent that someone's benefiting and doesn't pay, that means that someone else is having to pay what many people would think would be their fair share of the cost.
Well, I get that, but I would tell you that I think the majority of people in our town would tell you that they don't know of any home that has probably ever been saved or a barn that has ever been saved. So I don't know how to tell you how to address that one. But
well, I wish you did, because I get that comment. You know, when you start these assessments for the very first time in cities, and I've said this before, you will have people come up to the commission or the council, the elected body, and they've lived there. They'll say, I've lived in city X all my life, 35 years, and I've never called the fire department once for a fire. And the fact is, most people do not have a fire at any point in the time in their lives while they live there. But it's obviously true that we have fires, and it's important that you have, you know, the availability of fire services. You pay for insurance for fire, because you want to be able to like replace your property when it burns down. And your fire insurance would be higher if you did not have fire protection like you're providing. So they benefit from it. They may never use it, but when you do use it, you're going to want them there as fast as they can get there, and you're going to want that fire put out as quickly as you can. So I understand that. I've never had a fire at my house, and I've lived in the same house for 35 years. I have used EMS services 3 times in that 35 years, and I was glad that they got there as quickly as they did each time. But I'm also glad I've never had a fire. It's like,
Let me ask you a different question on the EMS side. Did you get bills for those 3 times you called them to pay?
Yeah, I did actually.
So if we're getting a bill to pay them, you know, where's the benefit there?
Well, from a city's point, well, number one, you can't assess for EMS services, but if you could, you'd have to reduce what you get in revenue because you can't collect it twice. You know, I was charged, I think, $500 the last time that was used, and my insurance company paid it, but my health insurance company, but I had a deductible on that. But yeah, I mean, it's just how you look. It's just at the end of the day, all this is about how you fund the services you provide your city. You don't have to do an assessment. You can just raise your property taxes or not provide fire services or whatever.
All right. Well, I've got one final question I'm going to throw in the mix here, and then I'll let somebody else step in. Are you aware of any other cities, towns, or county that collect for the fire and EMS by separate designated millage rather than an assessment? And if so, what would allow us to include both fire and EMS as opposed to just assessing for fire related?
You know, that's a good question, but could we hear from the public first, Mayor?
Sure.
I'd like to hear from them and see what they really have to say. We could always come back to it.
Yeah, Lori's had her hand up for 15 minutes. She must be getting tired.
Okay. Not a problem. We'll go to the public then if you guys want to do that. Is that good?
Yeah, that's good with me.
Thank you.
Okay, glad.
I'll save till later.
Okay. Russell, if you'd call on the public.
Sorry, I was unmuted. I do see that Ms. Parrish wants to speak. I see her hand is raised. I just wanted to make a quick statement if I could, Mayor. As I call on people to speak, if they could hit *6 on their phones if they've called in, so this way they would be allowed to speak. On their computers, they should just be able to speak once we hit the allowed to talk. They'll be given 3 minutes maximum to speak. I'm sorry, 2 minutes to speak on an item. We're going to time them. I have a timer on my phone because we're not in council chambers at this moment. So I'll let you know when 30 seconds is left. And Mayor, when I tell you 2 minutes is up, I'll leave it in your hands. Okay?
Yeah.
Ms. Parrish, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
First of all, just to clarify, there is no such thing as an exemption on an ag piece of property. It's a classification. There are no exemptions for ag. That being said, I served on the committee that I understood the council's purpose was such hard feelings were caused in predominantly last year by 5 horse facilities, and that they wanted a sense of fairness and equity. Those of us from the very first night we met that were there to a person agreed that there should be one fee. We took the number of properties, we divided it with what then Marty told us our budget was, plus add 4.5% for this year for 2021. And we took the number of properties, we divided it, and it was somewhere in the $51 to $53 range per property. All of us unanimously agreed that anybody who owned a home and had an agriculture business on that property should receive one fee. That was it. In addition to that, we were sure about our numbers. We debated with the consultant on the amount, the numbers, what it said on the property appraiser's website and the numbers he had. What has happened is once again, there's hard feelings created which the mayor and the council did not want. You tasked us with fixing it. We thought we did. It was taken over by the consultant and your finance director. And then they moved $86,000 from EMS to the fire budget that wasn't given us. Then they moved an additional $600,000 into the fire budget. And so now then those of us who thought the fairest thing to do is we'll all bite the bullet. If I have a chicken coop and orchids and it's not ag, but I like the ambiance of having nurseries and horses and cows in my neighborhood, we would pay the additional money. So now we're going to pay over $105 because the consultant also underjudged the number of parcels by, is that it? By over almost 300.
Sorry, Lori. Yeah, time's
Anyway,
up.
I think okay, you've made a mistake again. The mayor is correct and the consultant did this. I think you need to put it back the way we recommend it.
Thank you. Who's next?
Okay, let's see. The next person is Steve Brightcruz. Let me call on him. Give me 1 second. Mr. Brightcruz, can you hear me? Mr. Brightcruz, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Great, thank you. Really, I just wanted to follow up on what Lori was talking about. We did discuss those issues. We did work out the numbers. And when it went back to the consultant, the numbers all changed. And a lot of the decisions, some of the decisions that we voted on and the committee decided on, when it came back to us, or really it never came back to us, but when it went to the council, and we started hearing about it, we're hearing things that we never voted on, that we actually voted the other way. And the other thing that I find perplexing is that we talked about that this would be based on an effort methodology, which is what we've always had in the past. And then even though we talked about that methodology and the effort methodology, it was never brought up to us in the committee that methodology was going to be changed. I'd like to know why that was not brought up to the committee until after we had stopped meeting and the report came back. That should have been brought up to us. It should have, we should have known that was happening. And if that was happening, certainly I would have requested that we see 2 alternatives, one based on the effort methodology and one based on the personnel methodology that was actually eventually used. To switch there halfway through without any notification to the committee, you know, it's first of all, it's not right. But second of all, a lot of people felt like the committee was in the loop and they were making these decisions. And so many of the critical decisions were made after the committee got done and after it turned back over. And then, you know, those things were never reported back to us. Those decisions that we voted on, that we thought were set, that were then changed later, and that should not happen. That, you know, those things should be said right out front. Thank you.
Mayor, if I could interrupt for a minute, I got a question for Chris.
Go ahead.
Is there any way that we can put this back the way Lori suggested, or are we stuck with this now since we approved the methodology already?
Well, no, you're not stuck with anything, number one, but let me address part of Ms. Parrish's question and most of Mr. Brightcruz's question, which has to do with the additional $600,000 that more or less that you talk about would be the difference in the 2 approaches, one being the effort approach and the other just being the staffing approach. You can lower your assessment by that amount of money. And that just, all that means is you're back to the same percentage that you applied for the property taxes versus your assessment. So your policy of collecting 100% doesn't, you know, that's just a practice. You can change it back and say, you know, just lop off the $600,000 extra. That's a difference in the approach. And, you know, the difference comes in your property taxes. And this is why you were able to lower your property taxes to some extent, because the burden was shifted because of a change in part of the methodology. But that doesn't mean you have to collect 100%. I mean, that's just a choice you're making. And I don't think you need to change the methodology. If you're worried about the pricing, then I think you just change the mix of property taxes versus assessment. And that leaves you some capacity to do both.
But what you're saying is you're going to add that to the property tax.
Well, that's where it was before. So, I mean, to me, I mean, what you're doing is changing currently how much property taxes you use versus how much assessment you use. The fact that the methodology changed to allow you to be able to charge more from an assessment point of view doesn't mean you have to change more from an assessment point of view. That's a choice you're making between the mix of property taxes and assessment.
With that being said, then you can't really lower the property tax. So in essence, we are stuck.
Hold on, there's a couple of things there, Dee, that we have talked about in the past. But Chris, is what I'm hearing you say just there is that whether the council was aware or not, the shift in money is really representing the fact that we were subsidizing and we're no longer subsidizing?
Many years ago.
Well, yeah, I would say that. I would say that to the extent that in previous years, your EMS represented the way the methodology was. Your EMS represented more of a portion of your fire budget. You were spending more property taxes to support EMS. What we're saying is your fire budget is actually bigger than what you thought it was the way we approach it. And by virtue of that, you're paying less for EMS from property tax point of view. If you looked at it from a total fire department operation, fire and EMS, your costs really have only gone up $200,000 or so. So the difference of $600,000, and I'm just rounding here, the difference of that $600,000, while it is true that it's a difference in approach, it's also in keeping with a practice that you've had of collecting 100%. But that doesn't have to be that way. You can just say, okay, we're going to collect 90% or whatever it turns out to be. But the bottom line is, if you step back and look at it, last year you collected $1. Now you're collecting $1.05 for, I'm just using it as an example, $1.05 for fire rescue. And you're saying, okay, we're going to lower the property tax and we're going to raise the assessment. But there's nothing magical about that. And you talked about it at your last budget meeting. You said, well, let's preserve our options and try to keep the property tax and discuss it some further. And to me, that's just normal business. You're trying to get a handle on how to finance the operations of your city, but don't lose the fact that your fire budget only went up $200,000 and you changed the mix of property taxes versus assessment. But I mean, you don't have to do that.
No, but you're going to get it one way or another. Either your taxes go up or you pay it in the fire. I mean,
well, what changes
pay it at the end of the day, no matter what.
Well, exactly. But I mean, what changes though is who pays what is what changes.
All right, let's get back to the public so we can get this moving, please.
Okay.
Hey, Mayor, we have the next speaker is Fred Cox.
Okay.
Mr. Cox, can you hear us? Mr. Cox, you're on mute. You have to hit *6 on your phone. Mr. Cox, your phone is muted. Do you want me to provide a number, or do you want me to keep trying to work this? There's no one else that has their hand raised, Mayor.
I don't know. Just there we go. He's here. I think I heard him.
Yeah, Mr. Cox, are you there?
I've been here the whole time. I don't know what's wrong.
Okay. Well, you have two things on. You need to mute one of them because we're getting feedback.
I think my wife's muting hers. Okay, real quick. I guess I'm going to start out with Yogi Berra's quote. It's like deja vu all over again. We were here 1 year ago on ag barns that were horse barns. Now we're here back again on ag barns that are nursery barns. And someone said last year, a barn is a barn is a barn. I don't know what we're doing. let's go back to Chris. He says calls per service. Well, according to you, Russell, I did a public records request last year. We have, I'm sorry, according to you, we don't keep records of that in Southwest Ranches, and you directed me to Davey. I did so. Davey has no calls for any farm structures or barns in 5 years. So that means 0. So Chris has conveniently taken calls for Publix, Lowe's, Bank of America, Tom Thumb, Shell gas station, Goodyear Tire, and the real commercial businesses and overlaid them onto agriculture. Well, agriculture is commercial in lowercase c. The other groups are commercial in capital C. There's a huge difference between Lowe's and Publix than one of our barns. No one pulls up to one of our agriculture barns looking to buy 2x4s or ordering a dozen eggs. It's just unbelievable to me that we've been here 20 years and we're back to where we were. Also, when the state approved this change, the one state statutes 125.01 and 170.01, it specifically states that the town may, M-A-Y, may do this. I thought last year we decided not to do it. And when the state did it, it was passed on the House and the Senate on March 4th, 2016. The governor signed it on March 24th, 16, and it wasn't effective until November 1st, 2017.
Fred, I'm sorry, Fred, but your time's up.
My point, last point, if we're going to change things, for goodness sake, let the people know. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Or we're
Got
good?
about 2 other speakers, Mayor. The next speaker is Jason Hallberg.
Okay.
Jason, can you hear us?
Yes, are you able to hear me as well?
Yes, we can hear you. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Perfect. Thank you. So I think the consultant last explained it where it may make more sense. And I just wanted to add this in as well. So for 2019, 2020, the total cost for the fire expense versus the 2020, 2021 is about 153,000. I think maybe we'll call it 200,000 because I heard that too, difference. The big shift that I see is that in 2019 to 2020, the allocation from the general fund portion, meaning from, was 57.7% versus this year, they've dropped down and the subsidy is only 40%. So that's a big difference of, I don't know, like $600,000 or so. And so now that has to be collected through the fire assessment. My point, I guess, is that before last year, last year, we subsidized the difference that we're seeing, and that's why there's a $105 increase on the residents as well as other increases and changes. My suggestion is that I would like to see that the ad valorem, that we reverse back to the way it was last year. And the benefit to the residents and to most people is that ad valorem taxes are tax deductible versus the assessments are not. At the end of the day, the money is going to come out of taxes from the residents, whether we pay $105 more in our ad valorem or we pay $105 more through the special assessment. I think it'll be less painful, and I think there'll be a tax benefit to the residents. Thank you.
Okay, one more.
Yeah, we have one other speaker, Mayor. Let me just.
That's it. Done after this.
Okay. The next and last speaker is David Kaczynski. Let me just call on him. Give me 1 second here. No. Got a little bit of a delay on our side. Okay, here we go. Mr. Kaczynski, can you hear us?
I certainly can.
Okay, you have 2 minutes, sir.
All right. Good evening, Council. David Kaczynski, 6411 Holity Trail. I guess I have to thank Jason. He kind of just led my point exactly as I was preparing for this and analyzing this. When I went to my tax preparer and I said, why am I having to pay my additional taxes? And we're looking at the assessments. And he says, well, we can't write off your assessments, but we can write off your ad valorem. So that was like the exact point that I was going for, that Mr. Hallberg had said earlier. Now, when going back to what Ms. Parrish had said, I was at that meeting as well when she made the motion that it should be uniformly spread among the town. And that is what my understanding was, that the fire committee was going to recommend from their study. Now, if there's nothing to be done, and assuming that, I know there's people that have the mind thought that I'm not going to fight City Hall, so they're not going to bring up the issue that they want a reconsideration of the use of their land, using Chris's word. And I just want to know, is the time passed for any other residents to request a reassessment of their property? What would be the time frame for a reassessment, and what kind of guidance can be provided to such residents, whether they consider they would be entitled to a reassessment? That's assuming that we go back to the procedures that were going on at this moment. But in the broader picture, the ad valorems are something that a person that itemizes their taxes could write off, but assessments we can't write off. So I think that we should go back and do some form of subsidy. Thank you.
Okay.
It's another resident with their hand up.
Yeah, this could go on all night. You really wanted to keep doing that? I mean, we all know where we're at, so to speak.
Can I say something? Is it
Go right ahead,
possible?
Delsa.
Thanks, because I was going to say something when we were first up at bat, and then we weren't up at bat. Now we are up at bat. Now we're not up at bat. So is it council can say something now, or?
Yes. That's
okay, because my question is, and Chris made the comment, and so it's kind of to Chris actually, but if people don't pay a full assessment, I believe it was called, I tried to defer. The word was deferred. All right, some people have their assessment or portion thereof deferred. And if it went back to property taxes to get the higher rate after we've lowered the property taxes, there are still things called deferred. So I want to know which residents in this town, taxpayers, i.e. taxpayers in this town, make up for the deferred. I don't have commercial, so I want to ask that question. When we say that funds are deferred, who is it within the town that makes up the difference? Because it's going to be an assessment or it's going to be property taxes. That's what it's going to be. So that is my question, and I want an honest answer so that if anyone is listening who might be wanting to hear that answer, I would like them to do it. So if taxes are deferred for special properties, where does that money come from? Be it an assessment or if we put it on property taxes? Who? That's my question.
All right. Mr. Wallace.
If I use the word deferred, I don't know what in context I used that. Maybe someone else did, but I
You know what,
understand.
Chris, I think you actually said not pay fire assessment or a portion of it. So if I say not pay a portion of taxes as opposed to deferred,
Right,
or
well-
not pay a portion of the fire assessment, somebody makes that up. It doesn't come from Broward County.
Right. All right.
So who pays it?
Well, someone in Southwest Ranches is paying it. Let me just.
You
jump to
mean
that.
you mean a property taxpayer, not someone.
Someone who owns property is
There
paying.
you go. Someone
Right,
who's
so-
paying taxes who isn't on a special deferred, i.e. doesn't pay schedule.
Well, yeah, so forget that. Let me try to just jump past the word deferral or anything like
Yeah,
that.
I'm sorry. I wrote so many words down.
That's
I
all
tried
right.
to make it.
I think I understand the nature of your question.
Okay.
Someone's got to pay because you have fire costs. So how you've determined who pays in past years is whoever benefits from fire protection pays 100% of that cost.
Right.
And then the EMS is paid for by property taxes and other sources.
Right.
Property owners pay this one way or the other. And there is a break-even point where someone who owns property value X is going to pay more under an assessment than they would for property tax if they had paid just property taxes and vice versa. Now I'm just going to hold up my thumb and say maybe at around $350,000 to $400,000, people above that are going to benefit from a special assessment because the value of their property is greater. So the property taxes would have been greater to them. So the burden is shifted from whatever that break-even point, and don't hold me to whatever the number is, but I'm just guessing maybe $350,000 to $400,000. People under that actually will share more of the burden, if you will. But at the end of the day, you've got to collect whatever it is to pay for your cost of fire protection and EMS services. And our methodology, yes, did change how much you can collect. But
Yeah, I
it's a function of the
understood. I understood, Chris, the change in that. It's just as if it's just like the homeowners who pay property taxes to the school system who have no children in the school system.
Right.
Somebody pays. It's kind of like a subsidy, a welfare payment, if you will. There are people with no children paying for the school system. And that's kind of what this is. It's spread out. And I was hoping that we would be able, under the assessment, and I may have been wrong, that we were trying, it was our attempt to spread it out more evenly. Because just as I have never had a heart attack, doesn't mean I won't have a heart attack and won't need someday, God forgive, an EMS, an emergency, anything. So I'm just saying, that's what I wanted to ask, because people need to know that this is going to be paid some way, one way or another. So if it's not through an assessment, it's raising property taxes. But there are people who, not to use it deferred, but are not paying. And so that's being made up by the rest of the people who pay taxes in the town. Correct?
All right, let me go back. Let me interrupt 1 second. If you could let, there's two other people, Flack and Barry, they have their hands up.
Sure. I think Chris answered my question pretty well. I just needed to know what was meant, and I apologize, write down deferred. But I was thinking maybe deferred to somebody else, like you knock on your neighbor's door and ask for a check for $1,000 and they say, why? I said, well, I got to pay my assessment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think what you mean is the burden's been transferred to someone else.
Right. Oh, there you go. That works.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
So,
All right,
Russell.
go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you. Russell.
Okay, Mayor,
Who's
I'm
got-
calling, the next speaker will be Linda and Todd Flack.
Okay.
Can you hear us, Mr. and
I
Mrs.
hear
Flack?
you. Can you hear me?
We can
Yes.
hear you. You have 2 minutes.
Hello. Well, I can tell you, Delsa, who pays for the differences with people like me, people that are agricultural, have been agricultural since 1995. Always provided my land use to anyone before it was a town. Back when Johnny Dollar was in charge, he actually helped us get started. We haven't changed doing business in these entire years that we are here. And we are being assessed extremely. And when I say extremely, Chris, you called me the other day and you are recategorizing me, but I should not be considered commercial. And on my other tax bill, one says combined use, the other one says residential, which is my house. I'm being assessed, and you're saying about who pays. I pay over $22,000 a year. I don't think I'm being one of the ones that's not paying my fair share, but I'm being extremely assessed here on these fire assessments. Last year was $6,000 on one of my lots, $2,000 on another lot. Yes, I am paying the proposed 523.51 on my house, and that was raised correctly. I've talked to Lori about this. There's no reason I should be paying these fire assessments when a house fire could be way more worse than my pole barn is. And there's nothing stored in there that's combustible. So I have a problem with this and I need your help. I've gone to everyone I know who to go to because last year I was told it was going to be fixed and it wasn't fixed. So then I missed the Value Adjustment Board's decision. So again, I paid a lot of money on this fire assessment. This is very upsetting. We're longtime residents here and we want some help. Somebody has to help us.
Thank you, Ms. Flag. Okay, the next speaker, Mayor, is James Barry.
Okay.
Mr. Barry, can you hear us?
Still muted.
Yeah. Mr. Barry, can you hear us? Mr. Barry, are you there?
Is there someone else we'll come back to?
Yeah, there is someone else, Mayor.
Okay.
The last person is Barbara Parga.
Okay.
Ms. Parga, can you hear us?
I can, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we can hear you.
I had a question, I guess, for Delsa when she was saying some people don't pay. I'm real curious to know as to who doesn't pay. We have a nursery and we've had it for 20-some years. We've been out there for 20-some years and we haven't really changed anything much. We do have a pole barn to store tools and you know, things that we use for our plants. But I know that in 3 years, our taxes went from, I mean, our overall property tax went from $4,000 to $7,500. That's not a lot compared to the last lady that you just was speaking, that was just speaking. However, we don't have a house. We don't have any permanent structures or anything. It's just surprising to me that almost $4,000, we can be charged almost $4,000 this year, $3,875 this year for a fire assessment for a little under 5 acres of primarily plants.
Can I say, Barbara and Linda, I wasn't saying people don't pay. I'm just saying that and I think that agriculture is more than appreciated in this town. And I wouldn't change our town to save anything, but I appreciate what you're saying, because one thing I would suggest as a council member would be not to wait 9.5 years to do an assessment. Because I think when you wait 9.5 years, the rude awakening is things go up. So I would also
Another 30 seconds.
Do what Chris suggested, which was 5 years max for an assessment, so we don't get hit like this. That's all.
You're not speaking about the homeowner, you're speaking
Okay,
about the council, right?
Yes. Yeah, but we don't want to be going back and forth. We're just letting
I'm
everybody
sorry.
have an opportunity to speak.
I'm sorry. Barbara
Yeah.
mentioned my name and I just, Barbara, call me.
Okay.
Please.
I just had the question, yeah.
I know.
So just know we're working on it, as you can hear from this phone call. So don't know how we're fixing it, but we're going to be working on it. So, all right, you want to go back to Barry? See
Yeah,
if
I'm
he's
gonna try
available?
Mr. Barry again and see if he's there. Mr. Barry, can you hear us? Mr. Barry, can you hear us? I see that you're trying to unmute, but there might be something wrong with your microphone, sir. We can't hear you. You may want to call into the number that was provided and try to participate that way. Phone number is 312-626-6799. And then use the meeting ID of 226-3857. Again, the meeting ID 862-2226-3857. Okay, Mayor, there's no one else that's waiting to speak.
Okay. Back to us. So how do we move forward to get this fixed? Obviously, we cannot fix it this year right now because that'll just throw this off the kilter as far as collecting, correct?
I just think, oh, sorry.
That's not true.
Sorry. I was just thinking, Mayor, that we should do as Chris suggested and have an assessment, if that's the case, at the minimum, you know, every 5 years rather than 10. Because I think that probably threw numbers off. I mean, nothing has gone down in 10 years or 9 years. Everything goes up, you know. So this is what I would suggest that the council decide to do eventually, and that is have a fire assessment every 5 years at a maximum rather, excuse me.
The dilemma with that is it's not gonna, we gotta fix the issue that we've created here.
Oh, no. I think this is what it is. We are where we are with this, but I'm just saying perhaps for another time we could discuss this at a different meeting, but it's something maybe we should think about. A fire assessment I know is not an inexpensive thing. But I was just, that's one thing I thought Chris said that made some sense to me, because then maybe it wouldn't be as eye-opening and as seemingly punishing to so many people when it goes up. Do you know what I mean? So that's what I was thinking.
Are we done with the public comment right now?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. I thought so.
Doug, your mic is breaking up real bad.
I know it is. So I turned my video off. I don't know why.
Okay, well, I'm going to add that I'm really disappointed in the methodology that was used. And this is something that we need to look at next year because, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, we've always fought for 100% recovery. And as such, it just seems that we're kind of stuck with it right now. But this is something that we need to look at next year, because if people are, you know, asking for help, we've got to be able to do something. That's my comment.
I have a question for Chris. Doug, are you there? Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, Chris, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Can you not hear or see me?
Okay, I'm sorry. What is the benefit to the residents by having a special assessment versus in the millage rate? Is there a benefit the way we're doing it?
Well, I would say the methodology doesn't change the issue about the benefit or say commercial agricultural. There is a benefit with assessments in the fact that it redistributes costs to the property that benefits from those services. I mean, to be able to have a special assessment, the property has to be specially benefited and the costs have to be fairly apportioned. That's pretty much it. So the question is, do these properties benefit? But keep in mind, to answer your question directly, this is just the ways and means of how you finance part of your city. And that part of your city is the fire rescue. There are a number of cities that just say, I'm going to levy a property tax and they're done with it. There are a lot of cities that say we're going to do a special assessment for fire services. You know, these weren't even allowed prior to the 1990s. But the Supreme Court of the state started to allow them. And so cities started to use them as a way of funding their operations. So it's a mix of the fire services and the property taxes, the fire services assessment and the property taxes that pays for your fire services, your fire and EMS. You can pay for all of fire from your property taxes and none from a special assessment. You can't pay anything for EMS from a special assessment because it does not benefit property, or you can mix it up. Now, your particular circumstances is heretofore, and even at this point, you charge 100% of the fire services. Most cities don't charge that or anything near it. That's why you saw Marty's earlier slide like you're at the top, because most cities don't charge 100%. They levy a higher millage rate. Now, the reality is a lot of people get fixated on the millage rate, and I don't want to raise the millage rate. But the assessments, you know, it's not a tax, but people look at it like a tax because you don't have a choice in whether you pay it or not. You can contest whether your property benefits or not. You can contest whether it's been fairly apportioned or not. A property tax is basically based upon the value of the property. So when you decide to say, I'm going to start doing a special assessment rather than a property tax or some mix thereof, what you're really deciding to do is how to shift the burden from one class of property owner to another. And there are a lot of people, like I live in the city of Sunrise, and I have pretty much since I moved to South Florida 35 years ago. There, they have a lot of condominiums that are under $50,000 or $60,000, so they don't pay very many or property taxes at all. So for them to say, I want to levy the fire assessment is a way of them capturing money from those people. Now, the downside of that is those people are also the ones on fixed income. So you're just you've shifted the burden from the wealth of a property down to people who may not have that wealth or the ability to pay it. Other cities, like say West Park, where we're, we help them out with their finance department. They don't have the tax base to be able to support their fire services. So they of necessity have to levy a fire assessment. Otherwise, they would not be able to pay for it because their property tax is currently 8.5 mils. And at one time during the recession, it was almost 9.5 mils or 9.7. So their property tax base is so low, they're forced to do it. Here you have a low millage rate. So it's really kind of a tax policy decision, if you will, on who's going to pay for fire services. Now, we showed some pictures to the city of a couple of these properties in question as to why, it shows how much they pay in taxes for their agricultural uses. I think Ms. Flack, she didn't really misspeak, but I think another listener heard her say that she was paying $40,000 in taxes. She doesn't pay that in assessments. She's paying basically what the other lady said she was paying in a fire assessment fee. Her current assessment across all three parcels, as we've recommended it be adjusted, is somewhere between $4,000 and $5,000, as I recall. So it's less than last year. They just don't think that they should have to pay it, or it's too much and it's not a fair burden for them. And that's in the eyes of the beholder, because to the extent they don't pay it, then another property owner is going to have to pay it one way or another. So I think if you look at the aerials of that, and I've talked with Mr. Berry for like 2 or 3 hours over the course of time. He's a nice guy. We get along well. And I've tried to explain to him why his property is, it's a mixed use property. He has a house and he has a large structure on it. That structure didn't exist as it does today. It was rebuilt in 2019 after a fire and in a different manner. But I think if you look at these properties and the structures on them, you may come to a different viewpoint of whether or not they benefit from fire protection services and whether or not they're paying anything towards those services after you look at the exemptions to them. And throw out the parts of the property tax bill, as you all know, that have nothing to do with Southwest ranches. Your part of the tax bill may be 20% or 30% or whatever it is of the total tax bill. So while they may be paying a lot otherwise, what Southwest ranches gets is just it's a portion of the total tax bill. And I'm not saying, and I'm not trying to lead your discussion on it, just look at some of these properties, what they pay in taxes, what those structures represent as a benefit to them and a risk to fire, and ask yourself if they should pay something or not. You've heard people in the audience call in and say they shouldn't pay anything. Look at them and make your own judgment on it. But commercial agricultural is commercial, and it always has been. That's the very definition of it.
All right, let me jump in one quick second. Russell, can you try Barry again? He said he's blocked.
Mayor, I don't see him on here. I see, let's see. Hold on.
Well, let me ask you this. Can we fix this, or are we too far down the road for this year?
Well, I would say if you want to fix it, it comes down to, look, I can't help you with the commercial ag. I mean, people in commercial ag, some of these guys have never paid before. They started paying last year. They don't think they should have to pay by virtue of the fact that they're agriculture. If you have agriculture with an exemption, Ms. Parrish said they don't have an exemption. That would be kind of a surprise to people who actually go into their property and pay less. If you're paying per acre, and you would see this on some of the videos the pictures that we have. If you went up to people, you would see from an aerial, they look like exact same properties. One has an exemption because they are engaged in a commercial business and they're paying $3,500 an acre, and their neighbor with the exact same lot with ostensibly trees on it as well, did not go down and get it classified as an agricultural exemption. They're paying taxes not on $2,500 an acre, but on $135,000 an acre. And that's without any structure. So two identical parcels for all intents and purposes. One's going to be paying more in property taxes because they do not have an agricultural exemption. One doesn't. So there's that. And then when you put a structure on it, the statutes say, you know, if it's a cheap barn, you're not going to pay anything on it. If it's truly a pole barn that's 70% open to ingress and egress, then you're not going to pay anything on it. And if it's not, then it's otherwise assessable because they consider it under the statute a commercial structure. And it is in fact assessed for property taxes, not as a residential structure. So just take a look at some of these properties and decide for yourself if you think that A, yeah, that's a fire risk. Yeah, they benefit from it. And should they pay? And those are the questions you need to ask yourself. We're comfortable that they benefit. You know, they may have an argument that they pay too much or not enough or whatever, although no one ever comes to these meetings saying they don't pay, you know, enough. But if you want to fix it, then, you know, I don't know if you still have the ability to leave your property tax higher. But if you want to mix up the $600,000, the $600,000 is what's generating some of these increases in rates. But it's not going to help you. I mean, that'll help you lower the rates for everybody, but it's not going to help you with the decision on is a structure on an agricultural piece of property that has an exemption. Is it otherwise accessible? Should they pay for something? Do they benefit from it? And ask you, just those are the questions I think you should ask yourself. I mean, I've tried to explain that to the Flax and to Mr. Berry, and you know, they just feel they pay too much. And part of that's because they never paid anything before for those structures and probably should have. Whether it's too much or not enough, that's in the eyes of the beholder. But yeah, you can just, at some point in the future, you could just do away with the fire assessment and just raise your property tax up and you're done.
Yeah, but I think we want to avoid that. One of the things that I liked about the special assessment is we knew our costs. They were never hidden in a millage. You know, they were always identifiable. So in my mind, the millage rate, yeah, it's an option, but it's not really, because I think that takes us down a very, very dangerous path, because the fire costs now become nebulous, you know, hidden within that millage. So
I agree with Gary.
I agree with Gary as well.
All right, I'm not sure if you guys are thinking it all the way through, because you talk about transparency, and I love when people talk about transparency. Separating it into two separate line items doesn't provide transparency if people don't know what goes into those line items to begin with. Every year, Marty has to create a budget. Marty has to review last year's costs. That isn't going to change depending on our methodology. We're still going to spend whatever it is we need to spend, and we're still going to need a certain amount of money. And in my mind, the fact that we are, for whatever reasons, and I think the reason we love to keep it out of our millage is because we're the number 7 in the county. Oh, we're the 7th lowest taxes in the county. That's not fair. Oh, we look at Weston and say, oh, Weston's the lowest because Weston doesn't charge most of the things that most cities have to charge. That's why they're at about 4%, if I recall. In my mind, I like what Jason said. I really think we ought to roll this into our ad valorem so we can all write it off on our taxes instead of having to, for whatever reason that we all decide, people don't get the benefit of the tax break because Southwest Ranches wants to do it differently. I lived in Coral Springs once upon a time in Margate, and maybe it's before the laws changed, but there was only one line item on there. We didn't pay for garbage. We didn't pay for fire. It was all included in the ad valorem taxes. And it's no less transparent. Anybody can do a public records request on the expenses for the year, and we obviously get whatever the costs are for the year when we start looking at the next budget year. You can argue it, but it's take the money out of one pocket or the other and screw the residents over by not giving them the tax break that they deserve.
You lump it all together. The average person isn't going to do public request. With this, it's broken down for them and they can see.
They care. There's
Pardon?
an assumption there. They care.
But that's an assumption too, when it's all lumped together. It's like going and getting your car fixed, okay? And the guy gives you a bill for $700 and he doesn't tell you what he charged you for. Who's going to settle for that?
That's exactly how the dealers work now. Things
Yeah,
change.
but that's not how the town should work. We should know this cost is for fire, this cost is for police, this cost is for that. That's what people are comfortable at.
You do.
All right, gentlemen, let me interject 1 second because I think Mr. Berry is trying to call in. Russell, you there a sec?
I'm here. I'm trying to get Mr. Berry right now.
Can you hear me now?
Mr. Berry, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, he's there. You have 2 minutes, sir. Go ahead.
Listen, okay. I'm one of the people, okay. My taxes went up $5,000 for my barn. I'm one of the people that's there. Now listen, I'm all for this town. I'm not a cheap guy. I love this town. I'm an ag guy, okay? I promise you my aloe plants and my vegetables, okay, and my palm trees will never call for fire services. And if my barn ever catches fire, I won't ask someone to go in there to try to save my bobcat. You charge $629 for a structure that has people inside of it that you have to run into to try to save someone, that's full of electrical appliances, and you have a barn full of non-flammable stuff, okay, that really doesn't matter if it burns to the ground. There's no life safety involved. All fire codes involve life safety. That's what this is about. I don't care if my barn burns to the ground. There's nothing in there I love or care about. To assess a barn structure on an agricultural property at almost 8 times the value that you do with human beings in it is insanity. That's all I'm asking, is a reasonable assessment, okay? My house is worth 25 times what that building is, and it gets assessed $629. I get $5,000 on a barn? Give me a break. I want to pay my fair share, but how can you charge me $629 on the structure I live in? And $5,000 for a building I could give a shit about. That's all I'm asking. Be reasonable. There's not a lot of money in farming. You want to make $1 million in farming? You start with 2 and you wait a couple years. You guys will break the back of the farmers in this town if you keep this up. You want townhouses? You want community developments? That's what you're going to end up with. Because I won't be able to afford to live here. That's all I'm asking. I appreciate your time.
Mr. Berry?
All right, that was the last speaker, but so I guess what's the goal moving forward on how to fix this and what's the easiest, quickest way without shooting ourselves in the foot, having to do our own billing?
I'm not sure if easiest, quickest is the right answer, Doug, but I want to know what Chris can do to undo what's been done here by changing our strategy on our methodology. I mean, the fact that we essentially were subsidizing 600 grand and now we're not. Nobody told me that up front, and I went to all the meetings.
Yeah, I don't.
So I'd like to know what we can unwind here to make things a little bit more reasonable. Now, you know, and to jump on what both Linda and Jim said, it is ludicrous. I mean, we've got $20 million homes around town that I'm glad they're there, but those people are paying $629, and they could be a 7-alarm fire if one of those things goes up with life safety at risk, like Jim pointed out. I do agree. You know, I don't know the right answer for this, but this is crazy to have a piece of property that has a couple of pole barns, and, you know, I've been to a million of these places around town, and it defies reasoning, I guess. You know, maybe we need a different taxing structure for what we're calling commercial ag that doesn't apply to Publix and Lowe's and, you know, the commercial retail versus the commercial ag. Because with Publix, I can see it. With Lowe's, I can see it. With, you know, a piece of property that's got a couple of pole barns on it and a whole lot of plants in the ground and some liner material, $6,000, $5,000, $4,000, it just seems like it's overkill. Because, and that's why I say load it into the ad valorem, because it doesn't cost us any more to go to Jim's house than Linda's house or Gary's house or my house. I mean, the town pays a fixed rate for these things on an annual basis. But the way we're going about this, we're screwed. When everybody keeps saying to us, you're killing ag, that you're not ag friendly. We hear it all the time at the meetings. Think about this discussion, because
yeah, but that's what this meeting was about. That's what that whole committee was about, to work on this and fix it. Now, I understand.
Well, hey, Doug, the problem with the committee recommendations were they were not followed. Now, obviously, he's the professional, but it wasn't even explained to the committee. I think we ought to go back with the committee recommendations on these things.
Well, the problem is you're late in the year here, and that's my concern about fixing it. I don't think we're in a time and in a place that we can make a change and modify this and not get slammed for not on collection.
So what are you going to tell the people on the phone? This was easier? This was quicker?
No, I'm not going to say easier, quicker. I'm saying we're going to work on fixing it. I just can't fix it overnight.
You just did say easier, quicker a few minutes ago. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Okay, well, we're trying to resolve a problem.
Right.
And we don't need to create another problem in doing so.
So if I could, I mean,
go ahead.
I cannot help you, and I would take exception. I've talked to Mr. Berry at length, and we get along fine. So this isn't something I wouldn't tell him otherwise, and have. Look at his properties, both that he has, and then the one that's his neighbors that he doesn't own. Look at the structure that abuts his house. He says there's no flammable material that's stored in it, but yet he stores equipment with gasoline engines in there. So that is a risk for fire. It is a greater risk than residential. It is a building that's not permitted, so you don't really know how it's built. That's the nature of agricultural buildings. But decide for yourself if those structures, like the flax, benefit from fire protection. Then the only question is, you know, how much should they really pay? And, you know, that's an honest question to ask. You know, we think it's been applied fairly for commercial, but I would also say that the committee, I think it was intended for the committees to meet more often than they did, but unfortunately, when COVID-19 came up, even when it did come up, we still met a couple of times, but then it just became too dangerous. And there was a period of time where cities really weren't able to do meetings like we have now. And that's just unfortunate, but I don't think it was trying not to communicate. The last meeting that we had, in fact, we left with kind of a subcommittee with Fred and I basically having to meet on what determines what's commercial, because it was clear that we weren't going to be going after residential pole barns and things of that nature. Everyone was pretty much in agreement, like I discussed earlier. But that left, well, what's commercial in your mind? Because the committee was adjourning at that point. I said, look, I need some direction on what you guys think commercial is, because I need to work with our attorneys in defining that in a way that's defensible. And so, you know, Fred came to my office, I went to his house, we looked at a lot of stuff, and I know Fred says we talked about big C and little c, but to me, that was the original issue. What's commercial in your mind? And the fact, you know, it wasn't one of these properties, but that we've been talking about, but there was some property owner who they were concerned about that was only selling bromeliads on the weekend. Well, it turns out that structure, if I remember correctly, really wasn't accessible anyway because it didn't meet the terms. But I said, just because the person's only selling bromeliads on the weekends doesn't mean she's not supposed to collect sales tax, doesn't mean anything else. It's a commercial business, no matter how big or small. And we're going to have it, and we did. In fact, the lawyers basically have a hissy fit saying, look, you just can't, just because they're small, you can't not assess them. They're in the commercial activity. But I think you need to look at some of these structures because they're, in my mind, no offense to Mr. Berry, but he's kind of like, it's not really a barn. It's a pretty decent sized building of over about 4,000 square feet that was erected in 2019 and apparently replaced a lesser structure that was actually on the site on the same footprint. But it is a structure that has fire risk to it and does benefit from fire protection. His issue is, you know, he just doesn't think you should pay much of anything on it, and I can't help you with that. I think it's a commercial enterprise. It's a mixed-use property. The portion of his lot that's residential is assessed as residential. The portion that's agricultural of that particular lot, the land is valued at $2,500 an acre, and you know, basically doesn't pay any property taxes on it. The lot next to it that he now owns only pays you know, a couple $100, not even in property taxes. So the contribution to your city's coffers isn't as great as you might think. You just have to decide if they benefit or not. If you want some relief otherwise, then you need to talk to the finance director, Marty, and see what you can do, because the $600,000 that really represents the change in methodology. All our methodology does is give you the capacity to recover more. And you don't have to recover that additional amount of money. You can just say, you know what, we just want to try to ease into this, or maybe just because we have the capacity now that's larger than it was, let's keep our capacity as it was and see what you can do with that. But I mean, I look at the methodology that's being used as only providing you the capacity. Doesn't compel you to do it. That's a choice you're making to do.
Well,
yeah, we're going to have to come back to this, but
I think we ought to call the question.
I was going to make a motion to have this go back to the board and Chris so that they can work this out.
Okay, when?
Wait a minute, guys. You can't do that.
Can't?
No, there's a motion and a second on the floor already.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just
call the
following the rules. I'm following the
Roberts. Forgot my buddy Robert.
Call the question, please.
All right, Councilmember Amundson.
Wait a second, Russell, could you please, it's been a long debate, could you please read the motion into the record so everyone...
Certainly, certainly, Keith. The motion was merely to approve the resolution as presented for the fire assessment. So I'll start with Councilmember Amundson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hartman,
No.
Councilmember Jablonski,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schroeder,
Yes.
Mayor McKay.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move now to the millage and to the budget portion.
Before you start, Marty?
Yes, Chris,
The rest
thank
of this
you.
meeting- The rest of this meeting probably doesn't apply to me, and with your permission, I'd like to leave. But I'd also like to say, we don't mind working additionally on this at no additional charge to help you try to reconcile some of these items.
Greatly appreciated, and we look forward to doing that.
All right. Have a good evening and good luck with the rest of your budget.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Chris.
Thank you, Chris. We'll keep in touch. Thank you very much.
All right. Good night.
Right.
Mayor,
Yes.
if I may, I have a statement that I need to read into the record before the millage and budget portion tonight.
Go right ahead.
So forgive me because this is rather lengthy, but it is important. Pursuant to Florida State Statute, Chapter 200.065, Section 2, Paragraph E1, the first item to be discussed tonight is the percentage increase or decrease, if any, in the millage over the rollback rate and why. For fiscal year 2020-2021, the town of Southwest Ranches, Florida, is considering a levy of 4.2500 mils, which is also 4.62% lower than the rollback rate of 4.4558. Actually, property owners with no change in their net taxable value will receive a real cash reduction of 8.73% in their town of Southwest Ranches portion of their tax bill due to the reduction of the millage rate from 4.6564 mils to 4.2500 mils. Although the town does have annual increases primarily from higher contractual costs pertaining to the fourth year of a 5-year public safety services contract for both police and fire rescue, these expenses are able to be strategically offset to enable the town to lower the millage rate from the prior fiscal year via the following. Our transportation surface drainage ongoing rehabilitation project, otherwise known as TISDOR, is eligible for mobility advancement program funding, which is the transportation surtax, and therefore is not requiring funding via millage for the upcoming fiscal year. The current economic environment due to the COVID-19 pandemic supports a reduced millage. 3, growth in net new taxable value of almost 32 million, representing over 33% of our 6.58% in total townwide growth, which is a new record. 4, lower debt interest expense due to FEMA and Department of Emergency Management reimbursement for both Hurricanes Irma and Dorian, allowing for full payoff of our outstanding emergency line of credit. 5, a newly adopted fire assessment methodology study reduced the allocable cost impact to the general fund. 6, quality of life and level of service improvements. Millage funded program modifications are less in number and dollar scope. 7, capital improvement projects, which we refer to as CIPs. Millage funded CIPs are also less in number and dollar scope. Finally, this budget provides for the funding of some program modifications, including quality of life and service level improvements, public safety, parks, recreation, open spaces, PROS, and other transportation capital improvements. After numerous advisory board meetings, council discussions, and a budget workshop, the revised budget totals $18,306,738. This includes a general fund budget totaling $13,315,023, just over half of which provides for police, fire protection, and rescue services. A capital projects funds budget totaling $240,039 to not just maintain facilities, but also improve our public safety, as well as parks, recreation, and open space infrastructure. Special revenue funds budget comprising of the transportation fund totaling $1,499,668 to maintain as well as improve streets, roadways, and drainage, and a volunteer fire fund totaling $233,768. A debt service fund budget totaling $1,304,655, which provides for 1 year of principal and interest payments on existing loans, as well as a provision for future debt service. And finally, an enterprise fund comprised of the solid waste, bulk waste, and recycling utilities budget totaling $1,713,585. The millage rate and budget requires 2 public hearings. The initial hearing is tonight, with the final hearing and adoption scheduled for Thursday, September 24th, 2020 at 6 p.m. Thank you, Mayor. And if we can get a motion and a second on the millage, Marty will do his presentation.
So moved.
Yes, please. Russell, can you read the reso into the record, please?
Certainly. It's a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Southwest Ranches, Florida, approving and adopting the tentative millage rate for taxation of real property lying within the boundaries of the Town of Southwest Ranches for the 2020 to 2021 fiscal year, commencing October 1st, 2020 and ending September 30th, 2021, providing for severability and providing for an effective date. I believe I did hear a motion and a second already. So
yes,
Mayor, it's for you.
Yes, Councilmember Hartman on the motion, Councilmember Jablonski on the second.
Correct.
Okay, Mayor, can I proceed?
Yes,
Okay.
you may.
All right, we're on slide the 18, which is our tentative millage, first public hearing. Introduction, we have a presentation and charts of the municipal rates compared. We're going to go to the Southwest Ranches historical and the proposed total millage rates. Total millage rates is not only our operating, but also our debt service. And number 3 is our Southwest Ranches millage percent to overall total direct and overlapping millage. Now our comparison, we're going to provide you with a comparison that you will see a chart that currently, that's fiscal year 2020, the Southwest Ranches operating millage plus the Tisdor millage is the 7th lowest combined total debt in Broward County. The initial fiscal year 2021 millage rate proposed tonight favorably moves the relative position of Southwest Ranches to the 5th lowest of 31 municipalities. Accordingly, the relative position of Southwest Ranches among all Broward County municipalities is favorably lowered to almost within the upper 16%. 26 municipalities are proposing millage rates higher than Southwest Ranches for fiscal year 2021. Screen number 21, you will see we're moved up from 7 up to 5. It's ranked by the initial combined millage. That is operating in debt millage. Operating in Florida statute only permits 10. You will see number 31 in the next slide, don't change yet, is over 10 mils, and that's because it includes debt service. So the way to look at this comparison is your total combined millage, and you will see we are only ranked favorably in the top 5, which is fantastic. And you will see that only a third have millage rates under 6.0 and above. So we're well under the norm, and it's something to really appreciate and be proud of. Going to the next slide, slide 22, moves it all the way down to number 31 last, Lauderhill at a 10.7898, and that's your total gross millage. Second page, everything is almost 6.5 and above. So that's the proposed millage that we're presenting to you tonight. That was part of our budget workshop. Going to the next slide, 23. We provide a historic and proposed total millage rate rolling this back as presented tonight, all the way back that we're able to go 6 years to 2015. Our rate tonight is lower than the millage rate of 4.2719 that was proposed in fiscal year 2015.
Around Durrell, sure.
Just remind everybody, please put your screens all on mute. Thank you. Okay, so where it shows you the trend last 3 years, especially going down at proposed tonight 4.25. Now we're next screen, which is slide number 24. This is our total direct and overlapping rates, and we have the yellow column highlighted that you will see, and everyone in the public tonight, it's important to realize the amount of money you're paying does not all come to the town of Southwest Ranches. Only approximately 25%. That's a key criteria. So total direct, which includes your Broward County, your school board, your water management, your navigation district, your CSC, and your hospital district, in total gets 75%. And the town only receives less than 25% of the total bucket. And that gives you a representative breakdown by type of tax and shows you that fact. And the total you will see at the end at 17.3330, which we'll be looking at the next slide. Over the far right, you will see for fiscal year 2021, the 17.330 and how the trend, primarily favorable based on the Southwest Ranches decline, you will show an overall decline in your total millage representing all taxing authorities. And we went back 6 years to fiscal year 2015 to give the public a full transparency of the impact of the decline. 26, please, next slide. Oh, for the millage, that's all I have. Public comment, questions, comments, and back to you, Mayor, and then vote. Thank you.
Marty, you just broke a record.
Russell, any public have their hand raised?
Thank you.
We have one hand up, Mayor, Steve Bright-Cruz.
Yes, we have, that's correct. Thank you, Andy.
Go ahead.
Mr. Bright-Cruz?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, 2 minutes.
Just a couple quick comments. First of all, I just commend the council, the administration on putting together this budget and the low millage. That's good to see. Even though a bunch of it is going to fire, it's still a good accomplishment. So I appreciate that. You know, it seems like we always get to this point and we see things that are going on, and then we don't think of them and we don't work on them until next year when it seems like it's another fire drill. So what I would recommend is that at this point, let's not drop this. I think we should do, Marty, I think you should, and your finance team should take a look at what it would look like if we were to go to straight millage. Let's not guess at it. We've got the time, you know, let's for next year, let's do the analysis. Let's see how it affects the ag. I think it might have an excellent effect on ag. I think that it may be a much fairer allocation. I don't know. I haven't seen the analysis. But based on the issues that I've seen tonight, I think it makes a sense that we need to do that analysis. We need to answer those questions. We need to find out what it is that's going to serve our residents the best. I don't think we're there yet. Based on what I've heard, I think we've got some serious flaws. And rather than just kind of putting this on the back burner until it's budget time again, I think we should start that analysis now so we're prepared ahead of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bright-Cruz. Okay. Yeah, we have no one else seeking to speak.
All right, back to us then. Okay. Anybody have any comments, or am I calling the question?
No, I think Marty's done an outstanding job as usual, and I'm happy that we're having a lower number. I mean, you know, what we just went through with the whole fire thing, that's another discussion right now.
Correct.
But, focusing on this, you know, it's a positive sign, and you know, we're moving forward with it. Or at least I hope so.
All right, call the question.
Councilmember Amundson? Councilmember
Yes.
Amundson? Yes. Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
sorry,
Okay.
I was
That's
muted.
okay. No problem. Councilmember Hartman?
Yes.
Councilmember Jablonski?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schroeder?
Yes.
And Mayor McKay?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Next portion will be our budget adoption. And before we get started with the PowerPoint, and there's only a few more slides left, everyone hang in there, please. Please read the ordinance. This requires 2 readings. Town clerk will do that now.
This is an ordinance of the Town of Southwest Ranches, Florida, approving the budget of the Town of Southwest Ranches for fiscal year 2020 through 2021, commencing October 1st, 2020, and ending September 30th, 2021. Providing for a budget basis, providing for expenditure of funds, providing for carryover of funds, providing for notice, providing for severability, providing for conflict, and providing for an effective date.
Okay, great. We're up to slide number 28. This is general fund revenues by our functions, primary functions. Where do the funds come from? We have a new slide with George Washington dollar bill. With the breakdown on categories, you will see our ad valorem property tax at $6,315,887 is 47%. Our special assessment revenue is $2,686,284, 20%. I'll only read the first 3. The others are small. Our franchise, utility, state sharing taxes of $1,849,926. That's where all our funds primarily come from. We're going to move to where do they go? Backside of the dollar bill. You will see public safety, $7,120,694. 53%, and that includes our volunteer fire components. So that's all in: public safety, law enforcement, fire rescue, fire protection. General government, which includes finance, legal, town clerk, administrative, $2,526,160, or 20%. Our government transfers fund our capital projects, our debt service. Our capital projects, $1,812,305, or 14%. Our physical environment, which includes building, permitting, public works, $1,125,016, or 8%. Our pros, parks, is at 3%, $450,097, and community services, which would represent code enforcement, $280,751, or 2%. So that's where all our money goes out. Now, under our general budget assumption, I'll hold up our big magic book, and this book can be found on our website. We get a good screen size. You can find this, anyone has interest, thank you. We do have it up at the front desk. We have it on the website. If anyone would like to review it, we are having a second public hearing, as Andy has indicated, on Thursday, September 24th. That's just a reminder. And the summary, the budget, even though it's 200 page, it's a summary document of 200 pages. The objective is to keep our rates as low as possible while also meeting our costs. It involves no additional borrowing. Keep pushing the button and scrolling down, please. Here we go. Keeping rates as low as possible, no additional borrowing. It includes conservative projections of our revenues and expenses under a COVID-19 pandemic environment. So we'll be protected, all with that in mind, and we'll maintain service levels while addressing the council policies as well as priorities. Now, our program modifications that are funded, we have website redesign and ADA compliance. I'll avoid indicating the dollar amount. They're all there to review and look at if anyone has any question. But the item I'll read into the record: council chambers camera. We're including a townwide vehicle replacement program. We're including a townhome exterior repainting project. We're including a delayed and postponed Town of Southwest Ranches 20th anniversary celebrations. We are providing for a townwide parks maintenance and exterior building painting throughout all our parks. And finally, we have a comprehensive plan update, which involves our census data, much needed, and inventory and analysis. Next page, we have further items, includes a school zone flashing beacon replacement. And then finally, under our program mods, these are all volunteer fire department safety equipment. And just to make all of you aware, none of these have millage impact. This all is attributable to the fire assessment. So these have no millage impact. We are including the volunteer fire apparatus replacement program, a volunteer fire AED replacement program, a volunteer fire hose replacement program, and finally the volunteer fire bunker gear replacement program. Next screen will include our capital improvement projects, which differ from our program modification. Capital improvements, these are generally $25,000 or more in amounts. Our firewalls replacement and insulation, no millage impact. Most of these all have no millage impact. Fire safety modular protective awnings down at our modulars. We're going to be able to make further progress on our frontier trails conservation area. We are including as a capital improvement project the Town Hall Complex Safety, Drainage, and Mitigation improvements. That also has no millage impact. And then going into our transportation projects, we have a provision for regular drainage improvement projects based on advisory board recommendations. We are providing for drainage improvement surtax projects that we're able to participate right now and have been approved. Thank you, our town engineer and community services manager. And that will have no millage impact. And then finally, pavement striping and marking, which is for safety purposes, are all funded. And that's all I have, Mayor. I'm turning it back to you for public comment, questions, direction, and then voting from council. Thank you.
Okay.
We need a motion.
Yeah, that would be good.
Motion to
I make a
approve.
motion to accept.
Second.
Okay. Anybody have their hand raised, Russell?
No, Mayor, I don't see anyone with their hand raised for this portion.
Okay. Anybody else have any additional comment? Seeing none, call the question.
Councilmember Amundson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hartman,
Yes.
Councilmember Jablonski,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schroeder,
Yes.
Mayor McKay.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Mayor?
Hey, thank you. I'll turn
Yes,
it back
sir.
to Andy Burns, Town
Yeah,
Administrator.
Mayor, that concludes the public hearing for tonight. Thank you all for your time and attention. Thank you, Marty, for your efforts. At this point, we can adjourn this meeting. We had a regular council meeting scheduled for 7:30. I don't know if you want to take a break or just launch straight into that. Obviously, that agenda, as you all know, is certainly very light. So I'll defer to the mayor and council on restarting.
Anybody want to take a 5-10 minute break, or we want to move on? I'm okay with either way.
5 is good.
I'm good.
I'd rather plow forward.
Okay. Let's move on.
Okay, so we need to adjourn this meeting and then restart the regular council meeting.
All right. We pledge and everything else?
Yep.
Okay.
Motion to
We can
adjourn.
do that.
Second.
All right. Please adjourn. And, let's start the next one. Do roll call, please.
Mayor McKay,
Here.
Vice Mayor Schroeder,
Here.
Councilmember Amundson,
Here.
Councilmember Hartman,
Here.
Councilmember Jablonski.
Here.
We have
Okay,
a quorum.
we stand for the pledge.
Oh, again?
Yes.
Sorry. I've got my flag right there.
Russell, go ahead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
United
United
States of America.
and to the republic
for
which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Andy?
Yeah, we're public comment, Mayor.
Okay.
Mayor, we have a
Open up
few
for
people.
public comment.
We have a few people with their hands raised. The first person I see is Newell Hollingsworth. So I will call on him if you'd like, Mayor.
Yes, please.
Okay. Mr. Hollingsworth, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Yes.
hear you. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. Newell Hollingsworth, 199th Avenue. At our last meeting, you passed 5-0 the Sessa property development. My real question goes to the heart of what we are as a town. There was discussion about barns on the small buildable areas, which are about 4 or so lots. was not resolved as to whether a barn could be built on those. They said, well, you're allowed to have horses and animals, but according to best management practices, you have to have shelter for horses and large animals, except for cows. My question at that time, which I did not get to ask due to technical difficulties, was very simply, can a barn be built on there? Today I spoke to Russell, and he said they think that a single stall barn can be built on these small lots. Well, thinking is not saying, yes, it can be. What I believe, it goes to the core of what we are as a town, allowing rural activities, which owning a horse or a large animal is that, is it, yes, we can build a barn, even a one-stall barn, on these properties. Because you say we can have horses, but if you don't have best management practices, you're in code violation. And code says you have to have shelter. And we have to have a shelter, which, considering it's not agricultural exempt, has to be South Florida approved by building standards. So, has that answer come from the developer? Definitely. That a barn is available to be built, and I'm not saying that the individual would want to build a barn, but that a barn could be built if one wanted it on those small properties for their children or themselves or whoever they want to be, because it goes to the core of what we are as a town. This is the only night that you will have to reconsider, because Robert's Rules of Order says if you're going to reconsider something that passed previously, you have to do it at the next meeting by someone who voted in the affirmative. Therefore, this is your only chance, and if there isn't, then you are breaking what we are all wanting, which is the rural lifestyle, and you're denying some residents that ability to have. So if the developers have said affirmatively, yes, barn can be built on that property, no, then there's no problem. But I hear wishy-washy that it may be built. It's possible to be built. I don't know. Please answer that question. If not, put it up and reconsider it so we can have everyone enjoying the rural lifestyle we all enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hollingsworth. The next speaker, Mayor, is Steve Brightcruz.
Okay.
Mr. Brightcruz, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, you have 3 minutes. Yes, sir.
Okay. Just a quick note here that you got the way that's set up right now. I can't see the timer or anything if you're doing a timer. I'm just seeing my name plastered up there. But at any rate, I wanted to, first of all, just say I agree with Newell that we need to know definitively whether barns can be or stalls can be put on those properties. If they can't, that's a serious issue that we really need to resolve. But the main thing I wanted to talk about as well was I just wanted to put a shout out to Madison Sullivan and thank her for the presentation that we're going to be doing tomorrow night for the candidates night. I want to encourage everybody to come out and listen to that, sign up on Zoom so that you can see that. I think it'll be a great opportunity to meet all the candidates. So thank you, Madison. Appreciate all that you do. And I hope there's a bunch of residents out there. We'd love to see you. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Russell, you're muted.
Yeah,
next up is David Kaczynski.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. The next speaker is David Kaczynski, and I just called on him. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. David Kaczynski, 6411 Holity Trail. Way back at the beginning of the first meeting, there was some discussion about Waste Pro and missed pickups. last Thursday when I put my garbage out, it was missed. I didn't learn about it till I was late at home. Got home really late that evening. And so I was like, well, tomorrow's Friday. They'll come by and pick it up Monday. So last night, I put my garbage out, got back from home just before the meeting began, and my garbage is still out there. So now I got 2 days missed. I'm going to go ahead and file it on the website once the meeting's over. But I just wanted to make a record for this, that there was 2 consecutive missed pickups, and also follow up with Steve to thank Madison for her tremendous effort in putting on the exchange that's going to take place tomorrow evening. And remind everybody that you are required to register first and to participate to watch it, because I did have some neighbors call me asking, and they did actually confirm with me that it's required to register. So see everybody tomorrow evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Krasinski. Mayor, the last speaker that I have with their hands raised is Fred Cox. Mr. Cox, can you hear me?
Yes, I'll be briefly this time.
You got something else in the background on.
We're checking on it right now. Thanks, Doug. Thank you, Doug.
Yep.
Very quickly, the Fire Study Committee had recommended 1 fee per parcel, $629.14 now. It was substantially less when we recommended it. There's only 4 parcels that I'm aware of. Maybe there's 5 or 6. It's easily resolved, charging them $629.14 this year and evaluating it for next year. Coincidentally, along with the others, my trash wasn't picked up today. Not a big deal. I've stopped calling in. So I think the trash issue is a bigger issue than we're aware of. And third, as much as I appreciate the sentiment of the fire study reconvening, gathering again, I believe Albert Einstein is the one who said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. We met, we gave advice, it wasn't adhered to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Okay, Mayor. That's it. That's all the speakers, Mayor.
All right. Any board reports?
We have one person raising their hand, Mayor. Debbie Green has her hands up.
Okay.
Ms. Green, can you hear me?
Yeah, you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. You have 5 minutes as customary for board reports.
I just wanted to address to the, and I don't know if you can, I think it's very helpful that when we speak that we see the whole council, just like during the rest of the meeting. It gives you more of a feel of being at a meeting, and you can, you seeing who you're speaking to. Just a suggestion, as it was in the past. Thank you. We had our board meeting just the other night, and it came to a lot of our attentions that there's just been, this year, for whatever reason, there's just been it's been a lot harder to get the funds back, the scholarship funds back out to the students. So I just wanted, I believe you've all received a copy of the motion that was passed at the Education Advisory Board meeting. But I just wanted to make sure you had it and bring it to your attention that at the meeting, there was a motion, it was passed unanimously, that that reads that scholarship monies will be awarded once enrollment has been confirmed in a university, college, vocational, technical institution, or community junior college, period. So really all that the students need to do is to show the confirmation that they're enrolled in one of those higher education places. So I just wanted to also, I wanted to share that with you. Also, maybe ask council if you can maybe give direction to town staff so that the scholarship monies can get out more easily to the students. They've worked hard, they've earned them. And we just want to, and we've all worked really hard in raising those funds, and we just wanted for those funds to get back out to where they need to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Mayor, there's currently no other persons raising their hands for board reports.
Okay, council member comments.
I'll go.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank everybody for coming on in. I'll be really, really brief. I've only got a few things here. Just to piggyback on what Ms. Green said earlier, I was present at the meeting. This is probably going to come up as a policy decision amongst the council, and I'd like to entertain it as such right now, and how the funds are reimbursed from the scholarship. In terms of once we have proof of admission from the student, I think they should be awarded the entire sum of the scholarship without any further burdens of proof or anything like that. And Andy, I don't know, does that require a motion, or Keith, does that require a motion, or is that just we nod our heads and we either agree or we don't agree?
You can nod your heads and give direction to the council, to administration.
What was that for, Gary? I walked out for a second.
Oh, it's for the scholarship funds. If a student can prove that has been awarded the scholarship, we normally have required numerous receipts and such for reimbursement. We're saying the Education Advisory Board voted unanimously to award the scholarship funds upon receipt of admissions to the trade school or college or university or what have you. So in other words, they'd get the whole amount at that.
Enchilada. Oh, enchilada.
Yeah, the whole enchilada, as opposed.
So they just have to do that on admissions and not their classes or anything else?
Well, that would include that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when it's been a long time since I've looked at a college admissions sheet, but usually they have all the classes listed and the whatnot, you know, in there. So it's really basically comes down to, I think, a policy decision on our part. I'm in support of it.
I don't have an issue with it. I tried to do that years ago.
Okay.
I think it's great idea.
And I mentioned something
Go right ahead.
as in terms of policy decisions. So where you want to go is to give the award out on a non-reimbursable basis, regardless of
as long as they're
other-
enrolled in school.
Yeah, as long as
Right.
they haven't admitted.
So I would need to just defer there to legal, because in that case, we're going a completely different route from reimbursement basis to a non-reimbursable basis, regardless of scholarship, merit, and bright futures, everything else. So the reimbursement could exceed the total cost of tuition and out-of-pocket payments. Just want you all to be aware.
Keith?
But Marty, I think what Councilmember Jablonski was saying, that he wants to do it as just a straight grant to these students.
Yeah, once they've proved,
Right.
once they've proved that.
So that being said, the reimbursables is irrelevant. He just wants to give the students a grant. And if the council deems that that's how they want to proceed, that's up to the council. And if it is a change in policy, then Councilmember Jablonski, I'll change what I said and just do it as a motion, and at least then the record will have it clear for the future.
Okay, well, I make a motion that we give 100% of the scholarship upon proof of admission to the vocational university college.
As a grant.
As a grant. Yeah.
Okay.
Could we word that proof
second
of enrollment, not admittance? Or I think the way you said it was, if they're accepted, we want to make sure that they do sign up and they're going, that's all.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Delsa seconded it, I think. Is that
I
correct?
did.
Okay. Call the question.
Okay, I was just writing that down. Okay. Councilmember Amundson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hartman,
Yes.
Councilmember Jablonski,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schroeder,
Yes.
Mayor McKay.
Yes.
Motion passes
Okay, and if I may, Mayor, thank you all, council. Thank you very much. And on behalf of the Education Advisory Board, thank you also. It was unanimous amongst all the members that to go that route. Just a couple other things. One is, it's already been mentioned, we have candidate night tomorrow night, 7 o'clock on a Zoom call. I urge everybody in the town to come out and listen and hear what's going on. And hats off again to Madison for quarterbacking all of this and being the MC. And, I know she's going to do a great job. The other thing I want to go over is the fire study that we just recently completed. I think we need to rework this and relook at this over the next several months. And I think we need to take up Mr. Wallace on his suggestion that he could help us further along depending on how we want to move on that direction. So I just wanted to hear you guys' thoughts on that.
No, 1,000% support moving forward, looking at that and how we're going to fix it moving forward.
Yeah, as long as his time is at no cost, Gary, because I think he kind of left us with a mess.
Yeah, I don't.
He said without cost.
Yeah,
Did he
said.
not?
I know what he said.
Yeah, that's the way I interpreted it. So,
yeah.
And if there's costs, I think that needs to come back to us. And I'm sure
without a doubt,
Andy would be, Johnny on the spot, for lack of a better way of saying it, with that. And that's basically all I have, Mayor.
All right, just so everybody knows, the only reason I had part of my video off part of the meeting is because it was taken away from my sound quality or something. So until I have that looked at tomorrow or whatever, I'm not going to risk messing up the meeting by not having my picture up. So it's not that I mind being on video. I don't mind a bit. I just didn't want to mess up the sound quality because I couldn't hear good. So
You're forgiven by me.
I'd like to go next.
I'll go next.
Council member comments still.
I'll go next.
Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Glad to be here. First, I'd like to thank Gary Jablonski. Gary, I've been missing the Rolling Oaks hazmat month after month, and finally wrote down your dates, and I got to dump my 4 tires. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. Also, I'd like to let you know, I've been calling all the residents in the town. I've talked to probably over 3,000 people in this town about the job that we all did in reducing their taxes. They're thrilled, they're ecstatic, and they're excited. And they said, hopefully we continue to do this year after year after year. I told them no guarantees, but this one was done. I've got some issues with some of the neighbors did call about the bulk. And hopefully we can get this fixed. Other than that, that's about it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Who'd like to go next?
I will.
Go ahead, Bob.
First, and Keith, help guide me here. I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the CNC plat approval we did last time, contingent on their affirmative response that they will plan these properties to be large enough to hold a barn.
Well, in order to put that provision in, you would have to do a motion of reconsideration to have both the plat and site plan come back before the council for consideration, because the plat delineates the actual layout of the property, and the site plan was also approved as well, and they're both together. So your motion was correct. It would be a motion for reconsideration to bring back the plat and site plan to the next council meeting for further discussion.
So Russell, like he said, so that would need a second?
Correct.
Sounds to me like the motion dies. No seconds. Okay. All right. So let's see. Good evening, folks. I want to bring a few things up here. I think the greatest danger to our town is the threat to our neighbors from commercial development and increased density. As the last rural equestrian and farming community remaining in Broward County, together we must protect our ranches, farms, and rural lifestyle. There are those on the council who'd have you believe that commercial development and small lot sizes are the only way our town will survive the long term. However, you hear from them tonight, they're very proud to talk about the lowest ad valorem taxes in 5 years. Folks, we lowered taxes last year too. When I ran for council 2 years ago, the message I got from our community was abundantly clear. Our rural lifestyle is the highest priority. Absolutely no one I spoke to during the campaign said they wanted more commercial development, higher development density, or less open spaces. It's for that reason I'm endorsing Steve Brycruz for mayor, Jim Albritton, and David Kaczynski for town council. These people share your views and priority to keep us rural. I've known Steve Brycruz for over 20 years.
Hey, no, I don't mean to interrupt, but this really sounds like a campaign thing.
No, I'm not running for office. You can't stop me. I have
really
First
didn't
Amendment
think you
rights
felt
just
that
like
way.
you do.
No, Bob, you're campaigning for somebody. You can't do that.
Keith, we need an opinion here.
Legally, there's no prohibition for you to utilize your comments to make those statements during council member comments. In the past, the council has frowned upon those sort of comments, but it's up to, it is your right to speak in that capacity, but the council may want to chime in if they believe that they should have their own protocol on such issues. But yes, you're legally allowed to make those comments.
Yeah, I mean, everybody else exercised their First Amendment rights who are running, so I'm not even running. So it's for this reason I am endorsing Steve Brycruz for mayor and Jim Albritton and David Kaczynski for town council. These people share your views and the priority to keep us rural. I've known Steve for over 20 years. He was part of founding our town. During the 12 years Steve served on the council, he fought to keep us rural. As a council member, there's a lot more work to be done than showing up at council meetings, voting on agenda items, and speaking out on items you support. Steve does his homework. He prepares. He reads the reams of documentation that explains the contracts, ordinances, and resolutions up for discussion, and continuously solicits input from residents. He frequently challenges our administration and consultants on their proposals, reports, and the direction their plans will take the town, while monitoring their activities to keep our costs and taxes as low as possible. Together, over the years, we've frequently fought the mayor and his easy way out, it is what it is mindset when it comes to tax increases. There are certain things the council can do other than increasing commercial development and development density. Steve's leadership has significantly contributed to keeping us rural. In 2015, when the mayor was trying to attract commercial development and sell off town property, Steve worked to create the 2 charter amendment ballot initiatives that led to the 5.
All right, I'm going to interject here because I've never chased anybody about any commercial.
Hey, Doug, give me the courtesy, huh?
Well, you're saying something I want to counter it.
When I'm finished, refute everything I'm saying, if you please.
Yeah, but is this going to
You know
go
what?
forever?
I will go on for about 4 minutes.
I have a question for you though. I would like you at least, if you're going to go on, that's fine, but don't be pejorative. Don't be the way you just tried to categorize somebody.
Well, it's after 9 o'clock, folks, and if that's all we got on the agenda, I'm signing out because I don't need to listen to this. I thought Bob had wanted to talk about the town.
That's
what we're
fine.
here for.
Good night, Dee. You don't want to hear it, that's all.
No, I've heard it all before, Bob.
Have you?
I really
Okay.
have.
All right. Well, I'll continue. You can sign off. I'll let you know when I'm finished with my council member comments.
I think everybody thinks you want to be finished.
Well, that's the good thing about the First Amendment.
That's the good thing about it.
Yep.
You and Steve
Together
must
over
have
the
been
years,
through
we've
this
free.
for a long
Well, I've
time
said that.
together.
There are certain things the council can do to other than increase development and density. Steve's leadership has significantly contributed to keeping us rural. In 2015, and I'll skip what I said about Doug, I don't need to repeat it. Steve worked to create 2 charter amendment ballot initiatives that led to the 5-0 council vote required on the conversion of agricultural land to commercial or industrial, and the 5-0 council vote and referendum vote by residents to sell property. The mayor continues to vehemently oppose these measures. Our unique community feels differently. Both charter amendments were passed by a margin greater than 2-1. Steve gets it, the mayor, not so much. Doug is still fighting the 5-0 vote requirements that were passed overwhelmingly by you, our residents. Last year, E&D suggested at a council meeting that the 5-0 mandate should be revisited because it was misunderstood by you, the voters. Doug and his supporters put black vote no on 5-0 signs all over town. You couldn't miss them. 2/3 of you voted yes. His actions show me that he neither understands nor appreciates our rural lifestyle. While Steve, during his tenure on the council, has made significant contributions to the town's well-being and quality of life, too numerous to mention, he made another significant tangible contribution of a very practical nature. When we formed the town, it inherited from the county a lot of roads in bad condition and suffering due to deterioration from poor drainage. Recognizing the increased liability of the town, Steve went to work with the Drainage and Infrastructure Advisory Board and the town engineering staff. This led Steve to develop a program to repave the town's roads based on pavement conditions and that has strict budgetary and funding controls. This program today is called the Transportation Surface Drainage and Ongoing Rehabilitation Project. Sounds like a government name, huh? We shortened it to TISDOR. TISDOR is essentially an infrastructure project that today is fixing the town's roads and related drainage problems. Steve is a person of high integrity. He lives his faith. He's very conservative. And as a community leader, he's got a proven track record of protecting our community. I support him because, as he frequently points out, he has one reason for running for mayor for the town of Southwest Ranches, just one. That's to provide the next generation of families as close to the same rural lifestyle as the one he and his wife were privileged enough to enjoy with their families. A vote for Steve is a vote to preserve our rural lifestyle. Jim Albritton is one of those can-do, I'm here to help type of people. In our town, we call him a volunteer. Like most people on the council, Jim has volunteered to serve on town advisory boards and has been involved in HOA activities. I met Jim years ago at the Rolling Oak Civic Association event, and I regularly saw him at ROCA meetings and town council meetings. I was flabbergasted to learn that he and his wife, Rose, actually aren't residents of ROCA. They live in Green Meadows. A lack of leadership, however, caused Green Meadows Civic Association to fall apart years ago. So they joined ROCA to be part of the community and are at most town events helping out regardless of who sponsors the event. When I was president of Country Estates Homeowners Association, I always knew that if we needed help, we could count on Jim to lend a hand setting up, tearing down, any other assistance that was needed. That spirit of involvement led Jim to be appointed to do two very consequential boards. He serves on the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Board, which in my view, Mayor McKay and Councilmember Schroeder attempted to disband last year because they didn't agree with the board's recommendations on keeping us rural, limiting commercial growth to areas acceptable to the community, and the transparency of land use decision-making that this board fosters. Jim also served recently on the Fire Assessment Board. This temporary board was created, and I think everybody knows a little bit about it tonight, to work on with the town's financial administrator and expert consultant to provide resident feedback on the new fire fee assessment study the town conducts to determine our fire assessments. This board had some significant challenges because it's been, the last 5-year study was done 9 or 10 years ago. While serving on the board, Jim showed reasonable judgment and leadership, a well thought out understanding of the new fire fees discussed during the board meetings and their impact. Jim is a retired business leader. His 40-year career has provided him with applicable strategic leadership experience from his time in the construction industry. While a career in the construction industry may leave the impression that one would be pro-growth and development friendly as a natural consequence, Jim was born in South Florida and has been a resident of our community since 1985. When he came here to this area of unincorporated Broward County and built a home in the wide open spaces that later became the town of Southwest Ranches. As an old school resident, he feels Southwest Ranches is a unique rural community where the quality of life is priceless. He and I agree that the time has come for him to step up and run for council to protect our town from the conversion of green space to dense residential communities and commercial development. He feels we must protect this rural town so that our grandkids and their grandkids can enjoy it just as we do. I feel that his knowledge, skills, and abilities, as well as his passion for preserving our rural lifestyle, makes Jim the best candidate for Southwest Ranches Town Council District 3, which is Green Meadows and Deems Ranches. 4 years ago, David Kaczynski lost the District 4 council race to Councilmember Dee Schroeder.
Bob, I thought you said 4 minutes, man.
Maybe 5.
5? I think you're
almost
past
done.
10.
I'm not past 10. He won by 51, she won by 51 votes or 0.8%. That's less voters than live on my street. Dee was well known, having attended many council meetings and as past president of Sunshine Ranches Homeowners Association. David was relatively unknown outside of Southwest Ranches Sunshine Ranchers, where he'd been involved in their HOA. David did not let the loss cloud his view of the town as it does many people who were defeated at the polls. In 2016, David ran for council to serve the community, and for the past 4 years, he's done a remarkable job as the president of Sunshine Ranches Homeowners Association by growing the membership to the largest it's been in its long history, reaching out supportively to other groups in the community, and as well representing his members at council meetings. In 2018, David organized a community-wide effort of our neighbors to attend a standing room only town hall type meeting unified to oppose commercial development in Sunshine Ranches. A large corporation promoted by the mayor and his friends sought approval from the council to develop a facility just over the fence of many of our ranches and family homes. After speaking to those negatively affected, David decided these neighbors need an advocate to preserve their lifestyle and the value of their ranches and homes they've spent their lives nurturing. With a unanimous vote by Sunshine Ranches, he took on the effort. I'm confident that had that meeting not been packed with concerned neighbors, our roads might be filled with more traffic, our skies polluted with more light and noise, and our police officers and firefighters burdened with more unnecessary responsibility. In contrast to Councilmember Schroeder, the council member from Sunshine Ranches, David has a consistent record of fighting to protect our rural, unique lifestyle. David continues to support the amendment to the town charter that requires a 5-0 vote to change land use within the town, and the amendment to the town charter mandating a 5-0 vote before selling any town property. On numerous occasions, his opponent has taken the opposite position. He has pledged to preserve the 5-0 mandates. I take him at his word because he's demonstrated his commitment to fight to keep us rural. A vote for David is a vote to keep us rural. During the past 4 years, I've grown increasingly troubled over the direction of some of our council have veered, contradicting the ideals that were envisioned to protect the rural lifestyle treasured by our residents and enshrined in our town charter. Why are they trying to change our town's vision? They do this under the pretext of keeping our taxes low. No, they do this to keep getting elected. Those who know me know I fight yearly to minimize the tax burden or fees on our families, our senior citizens, disabled veterans, and family businesses. When I joined the council in 2018, I set a goal at one of my earliest council meetings for the administration to, at a minimum, stop the tax and fee increases. They met that challenge last year, and this year too. It looks like we've got another tax reduction to our ad valorem taxes. The approach the administration took to meet this challenge has not required any commercial development or higher density development. The argument to save our town through creating more commercial and higher density has no basis in fact. Fake news. This wrong direction threatens our shared interests to keep us rural. Time and again, retail, commercial, and development interests have tried to infiltrate our precious small town. They're doing it again by making oversized campaign contributions to town political campaigns to keep getting their people elected. It's the same old story of politics. Watch what they do, not what they say. We can't trust the current council to keep us rural. The obvious theme of my message tonight is that I am supporting candidates that I know will support the wishes of our community to keep us rural and protect our lifestyle. There's no hidden agenda among these three people. They have proven track records and stepped up to protect our lifestyle. Please support Steve Brycruz, Jim Albritton, and David Kaczynski with your vote. Thank you for a few moments of your time. Thank you, Doug.
If everybody would indulge me for about 3 minutes, that's all I'm asking for. I can honestly say from the bottom of my heart, Bob, you're a liar.
Oh.
Yeah, isn't that wonderful? The truth hurts, I know.
Oh.
Second of all, Steve, when you run for District 1, you have my vote, okay? As far as not having any kind of rural lifestyle, Bob, that's another lie. And tomorrow night is our night. It's not yours. You did a lot of staging tonight. You bored a lot of people. And you know what? If you go back to years ago when we had rants, we had a lot of kibitzing going back and forth. And we know who was doing all the writing from the town. It was you, Bob. This is your thing. I hope you all had a wonderful meeting.
When you were questioning,
I hope you had a wonderful meeting. You and Barry and David all at Steve's house the other day. I hope you had a great meeting because this is where it stemmed from. This is exactly where it comes from. Like I said, Steve, you got my vote.
All right. So all I want to say is, Bob, I can't wait to be reelected and spend the next 2 years working to get a better representative for District 1. That's all I got to say.
Knock yourself out, Doug. Thank you.
No problem.
Is there any way we can make a motion to stop this going on and on and on tonight?
Go to the next meeting, not tonight.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'd like to say one thing. I think that Bob is totally wrong because we're all residents of the town of Southwest Ranches and we love it, and that's why we live here. And there's no one running that I'm aware of that wants to destroy it. So, Bob, you need to get your facts straight before you start insulting people.
All right. Gary, anything? You're good. You're done. Okay. Let's go. Legal comments.
Sure, Mayor. As a FYI, I've been diligently working with the submitter of the P3 for the former CCA property to review their proposal and to try to delineate their offer into writing. We are close to finalizing the terms that they would like to offer the town in a contract, assuming that we get a final issue resolved relating to sales tax. It will come back before the council at the October 8th meeting for your review and consideration. I am working diligently to finalize the legal end of it, which is the document that they've submitted, so that it will give everyone plenty of time to review and to digest and to have their questions ready for when that item is considered. Other than that, Mayor, no further legal comment.
Okay. Mr. Burns?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and I'll be very, very brief. I'll just say last Saturday, despite the horrible weather, we had about 100 cars that went through the household hazardous waste event over at Rolling Oaks Barn. Thursday of last week, I was over in the Davie Police Station all day participating in a panel for their police chief interviews. We went through 6 different interviewees, all of which have South Florida experience. 5 of 6 are in South Florida now. And there were some good choices that we passed along to Rick Lamack for his further consideration. And I think whoever we're going to get of those finalists, I think the town will be well served with. And the only other thing I'll say is Broward County entered phase 2 in COVID reopening today. We will continue to monitor that very closely, and we'll phase in a reopening of Town Hall at the appropriate time. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Mayor, may I speak?
Go ahead.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll take it.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Good
night.
night, Gary.
folks.
I need some Tylenol.
Yeah, me dose.